left her a loss for how to react, so she could only repeatedly reassure herself that they were, indeed, a flock of simple-minded creatures. Taking a deep breath, Gushi applied all her strength, pulling at the bird's neck as if uprooting a stubborn radish. Yet, whether due to the bird being too deeply embedded or compressed, her efforts proved futile, failing to dislodge it. What manner of bird was this? To become so firmly entrenched with a single press? Her face flushed with exertion, Gushi strained once more, only to meet with failure again. Reluctantly, she released her grip, wiping imaginary sweat from her brow in the bird's presence and letting out a wistful sigh. I can't manage this alone. All of you must lend a hand. Her tone carried an undeniable authority, reminiscent of a battlefield commander. She hadn't missed how, during her struggle, these birds had done nothing but quack. Clearly, it was their blunder. So why should she bear the burden? Wasn't that a mistake? Quack, 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 quack. Fortunately, the simpletons seemed to grasp her meaning, promptly hopping into a neat line behind her, awaiting orders. Pleased with their compliance, Gushi addressed the grounded bird once more, and you, when we exert force, push with your feet against the ground. Don't leave all the work to us. No sooner had she spoken than the bird lifted a foot, tracing a circle in the air, a gesture she interpreted as agreement. Rolling up her sleeves and gazing skyward, Gushi pondered how she had ended up in such an absurd situation. Quack, Odai, no rusing. She turned and bestowed a kind word upon the second bird in line. You, use your wings to pull me. I'll give the command, and we'll all pull together. If you understand, quack once. If not, quack twice. Quack. Each bird emitted a single quack, suggesting they had comprehended. Once again, Gushi seized the plump body of the earthbound bird. During the previous attempt at pulling, the excessive smoothness of the feathers caused her hands to slip frequently, necessitating a reverse grip this time. Thus, she first smoothed the bird's plumage, then executed an inverted grasp, causing the ice crystal bird's feathers to bloom like flowers in an instant. Observing this, the other birds instinctively shuddered. Unconcerned with their reactions, Gushi shouted loudly, "All right, get ready." The birds jolted into action, swiftly aligning their wings one after another on the person or bird in front. Ready? Quack. Prepare. Pull. At Gushi's command, she exerted all her strength. The birds on the ground began to kick their legs, while the others pulled backward. 1, 2, 3, heave. A section was extracted. 1, 2, 3, heave. Another segment came out. Under Gushi's direction, they finally managed to yank the ice crystal bird's head from the ground with a pop. Exhausted, a few birds and one human collapsed onto the ground, while the extracted bird drooped its neck, appearing half dead. After a brief rest, Gushi examined the steel-like bird. Despite the immense force applied, it remained unscathed, truly a creature of iron and steel. And for it to sink so easily into the ground, the terrain must be shoddy workmanship. Recalling how a single spike had caused a large area to crumble, she grew even more suspicious of the soil's quality. Yet if it were truly that weak, why couldn't the bird free its own head? Pondering this, Gushi cast a peculiar glance at the foolish bird sprawled on the ground. Chapter 207. The tears of the ice crystal bird rising to her feet, Gushi gently nudged the motionless birds with her toe. Having rendered such a significant favor, shouldn't she expect some gratitude? Ingratitude is not a commendable trait. Quack. The ice crystal bird rotated its head 360 degrees, finally aligning it to face Gushi directly. The eerie, uncanny valley effect startled her, and in her surprise, she inadvertently delivered a harsh kick. Quack, quack. Instantly, the bird let out a pitiful cry. But who was it trying to fool? After enduring such tremendous force without a flinch, how could a mere light kick cause pain? Its acting was quite convincing. Just as Gushi marveled at the bird's performance, she soon grasped the meaning behind the distress. It wasn't self-pity, but a ploy to evoke sympathy from the other foolish birds. Hearing the mournful cries, the other birds immediately sprang up from the ground, shedding tears for the one feigning death. The birds' tears were unusually large, falling like marbles as they rolled down. Do birds even cry? Gushi watched impassively as the birds wept profusely. Tears welled up from their eyes and fell, crystallizing into ice upon contact with the hard surface before shattering with a soft crack. A peculiar blue liquid seeped from the fractured ice, splashing onto the foolish birds. Bathed in this azure shower, the birds instantly radiated a faint green glow. What was this? Life? Energy? Gushi had witnessed it once before during her battle with the Shark King, who drained life force from sharks. Never had she imagined encountering it again, emanating from the tears of birds, yet in such a bizarre manner. Stealthily, Gushi approached, intending to catch a teardrop in her palm for closer inspection. But as she drew near, the birds fixed their gaze upon her, emitting intermittent guttural threats. "Hey, aren't you being ungrateful? I just helped you out," she muttered aloud, though she knew full well that if she possessed such a power, revealing it would signify deep trust, let alone allowing further scrutiny. Hostility was only natural. Alas, she overestimated the intelligence of the ice crystal birds. At her words, their cacophony ceased abruptly. They turned their heads in unison, spinning them through countless rotations before bowing their noble crowns in deference. Their drooping, listless postures left Gushi unsettled. What did this mean? Communication was one-sided. The birds understood her, but she remained ignorant of their intentions. With a series of clucks and nudges, they jostled like blossoms in the wind, arranging Gushi's hand before weeping into it. Stunned and astonished, she observed their odd ritual as teardrops fell upon her palm, a chilling sensation melting the warmth and seeping deep into her soul. This cold was unlike any she had endured. Instinctively, she withdrew her hand, sending an ice pearl tumbling toward the ground. Heart aching as if breathless, she swiftly caught it, enduring the biting frost to clutch it once more. The pearl shattered, releasing a surge of green liquid that enveloped her in a wave of soothing comfort. Her breathing refined, her senses sharpened, and her depleted mental energy replenished at an astonishing rate. Fivefold. No, perhaps 10 times faster than any restorative potion. Tears with such potent effects. A little chill was nothing in comparison. Eagerly, Gushi opened her mission panel, where a magnificent buff displayed. Ice Crystal Bird's Tear Buff. Life Regeneration 100, Mental Energy Recovery 100. Duration, 5 minutes. Good heavens, with this, who needs mental recovery potions anymore? Gushi excitedly closed the panel, gazing at the foolish birds. No, the divine birds, radiating golden light. Gah! The birds tilted their heads, bewildered. After the initial excitement subsided, she regained her composure. The bird tears were perfect in every way, except they had to be used immediately and couldn't be stored. So, perhaps she needed to devise a plan to lure the birds back? After all, her ship already had plenty of trees. Planting a few more ice crystal trees to bear fruit wouldn't be an issue. Overjoyed as if discovering a treasure, Gushi secretly delighted in the thought of the birds' miraculous nature, eager to find the key and return to coax them. Adopting a serious demeanor, she addressed the birds. All right, I must attend to my tasks. I need to search for another key. If you wish to repay me, assist me in finding it. Gah! The ice crystal birds remained puzzled, still tilting their heads. Seeing their confused expressions, Gushi realized she hadn't explained the key's details. Unsure if the key would take a conventional form, she described what she had seen. To her surprise, instead of confusion, the birds appeared confident, chirping in a way that sent shivers through her heart. Could they truly possess some clue? As she pondered, the birds gathered around her, nudging her with their heads before chirping twice and flying away. Gone? Just like that? Had her role as their savior been so easily discarded? One moment, they seemed affectionate and reliant. The next, they vanished without a trace. Watching them disappear into the distance, Gushi sighed and withdrew her gaze. Why bother holding a grudge against mere birds? It was time to focus on her mission. After all, these birds would eventually be caged and unable to escape. So, she decided to continue harvesting the remaining ice crystal fruits. The area seemed even more perilous than before, judging by the size of the trees and the presence of the ice crystal birds, prompting Gushi to exercise greater caution as she extended her psychic energy. Having replenished her reserves earlier, her psychic strength had recovered significantly. She projected a psychic circle with a radius of about 100 meters centered on herself to scout for fruits. Quickly pinpointing the first batch, retracting her energy, she hurried toward them. This search hadn't been easy. She had probed multiple spots before locating these fruits. At least in terms of quantity, ice crystal fruits were quite rare. And now, she was about to take away these precious treats from the birds. Oh, why did her conscience ache with a hint of guilt while also feeling a twinge of satisfaction? Don't blame me, little birds. Chapter 208. The Giant Tree. Feathers on the head after an hour of intense effort, Gushi had stripped the nearby ice crystal trees bare, leaving her heart brimming with exhilaration. With the fruits temporarily handled, she moved on to her next tasks. While gathering fruits earlier, she had noticed a colossal crystalline tree not far from her location. Even when standing atop ordinary ice crystal trees, she couldn't glimpse its full height. Though it bore no fruit at the moment, such an immense specimen was undoubtedly extraordinary, compelling her to investigate. After packing her belongings, Gushi propelled herself forward with powerful strides, her gaze fixed upon the gigantic tree throughout her swift approach. Soon, she arrived at its base. The trunk of this massive ice crystal tree was extraordinarily thick, comparable to the Jinjing Shu she had encountered before. Yet that one had been lifeless while this thrived with vitality. Its branches flourished with lush foliage, radiating such vigorous life force that scarcely any other plants grew in its vicinity, leaving the surroundings barren, as if proclaiming its dominion over the territory. Gushi circled the clearing, her eyes scanning intently, when a sudden cawing sound pierced the air. Turning toward the noise, she spotted several clusters in the distance that captured her attention. Recognizing the familiar calls, she was certain of their identity. Upon closer inspection, 5 foolish birds were huddled together motionless. Stealthily approaching, she nudged them gently with her foot, but they remained unresponsive, leading her to surmise the cause had been mere dream utterances. "Hey, wake up! It's no time for slumber," she murmured, noticing the birds' eyes were swollen, clearly beaten into unconsciousness. She corrected her earlier assumption. Those weren't dreams, but agonized cries. Puzzled, she wondered what could have happened. Weren't these birds just flitting about alive and energetic? How did they end up collapsed here? They couldn't be dead, for their corpses would have disintegrated into ash like felled ice crystal trees. Thus, they must merely be unconscious. Reassured of the bird's survival, Gushi set aside her concerns and quietly surveyed the area. These simple creatures wouldn't lie here without cause. They must have encountered some incident or attack, and the perpetrator might still be nearby, warranting caution. Her wariness enveloped her like a shield of thorns, insulating her from a chilling gaze she sensed, which she traced back to its origin. Unnoticed until then, an enormous ice crystal bird perched on a branch of the giant tree. Unlike the foolish ones, this majestic creature, though similarly cloaked in icy blue, bore a crimson crest atop its head for which peculiar flames occasionally flickered, and its tail trailed long and elegant, reminiscent of a phoenix's plumage. Its dark, penetrating eyes locked onto her, exuding an aura devoid of warmth. Clearly, this ice crystal bird was distinct from any she had met before. A boss? Gushi concluded internally. If so, she couldn't act rashly. Both human and avian remained motionless, intently observing each other in a silent standoff. Finally, after staring at Gushi for over 10 minutes, the ice crystal bird boss seemed unable to endure any longer. It let out 2 sharp cries, flapped its wings, and flew away. Only when Gushi could no longer sense the boss's presence with her spiritual power did she allow herself to relax slightly. From the moment she set foot on the island, she had noticed that these birds weren't particularly aggressive. In fact, unless provoked, the ice crystal birds could be considered quite amicable. So, those 5 foolish birds earlier must have offended their leader for some reason. Gushi recalled the spot where the boss had been standing and suddenly realized that this colossal ice crystal tree was likely the location of its nest. The other birds approaching this area might have been perceived as a challenge, making their punishment understandable. Yet, curiosity stirred within her. What treasures might lie within the ice crystal bird boss's nest? Seizing the opportunity while the great bird was away, she decided to investigate. Driven by inquisitiveness, Gushi began her ascent up the massive tree. The trunk, with its icy texture, was treacherously slippery. After sliding down twice, she gradually mastered the technique, learning to control her strength and direction as she climbed upward. With a determined effort, she leaped onto the first sturdy branch, now approximately 20 meters above the ground. Glancing down briefly, she quickly averted her gaze and focused on the heights above. From this vantage point, nothing unusual was visible, prompting her to continue her climb. After a while, she still hadn't found the nest, but occasional feathers from the ice crystal bird boss appeared as if rewarding her perseverance. Gushi surmised they were molted remnants, and knowing that items from such a creature were valuable, she carefully collected them. Her eyes then fell upon the foolish birds lying beneath the tree, their feathers and crests sparking a sense of novelty. Inspired by their fluffy appearance, She adorned her head with one of the boss's feathers. To her delight, it brought a sudden clarity to her mind, another pleasant surprise. Energized by this discovery, she climbed with renewed vigor. After a long and arduous ascent, she reached the summit, only to find no nest in sight. Disappointment washed over her. Wasn't it said that all birds build nests? With a sigh, she resolved to descend. But as she turned, a massive bird face loomed mere 10 centimeters from her own. A silent scream echoed in her heart. She barely suppressed the urge to cry out. Reflecting later, she acknowledged how challenging it had been to maintain composure. The proximity of the great bird sent chills down her spine, drenching her back in cold sweat. How had it appeared behind her, without her noticing? She felt profoundly grateful that the ice crystal bird boss had not attacked her. Had it done so earlier, she would have undoubtedly met her demise. She managed a strained smile, greeting the creature with exceptional gentleness and politeness. Have you returned so swiftly? The ice crystal bird boss appeared perplexed, its gaze fixated on the feathers adorning her head. Following its line of sight, she shifted her eyes upward and suddenly recalled the numerous ice crystal bird feathers she had earlier inserted into her hair. A wave of unease washed over her as she wondered about the bird's intentions. Gaga! The ice crystal bird boss squawked twice, then tilted its head and plucked a feather from its own tail, offering it to her. Gaga! Bewildered, Gushi tentatively inquired, "Is this for me?" Gaga! The bird nodded, its eyes filled with anticipation. "I shall accept it then," Gushi replied, taking the feather and holding it in her hand while pondering her next move. However, the ice crystal bird boss grew impatient at her inaction. It squawked again and nudged her hand with its beak. The lack of communication, due to insufficient information, left both parties feeling anxious. Witnessing the new species remain unresponsive, the ice crystal bird boss became visibly more agitated. Chapter 209. A special gift. The ice crystal bird boss was now in a state of urgency. It had just dealt with a few audacious intruders attempting to plunder its home, only to learn from them about encountering a new fledgling. For the ice crystal birds, born and perishing on this island, never venturing beyond these seas, encounters with new species were exceedingly rare. Thus, small and endearing new beings held an irresistible allure for them. Indeed, in the worldview of ice crystal birds, small stature equated to infancy. They had seen younglings before, like the snowman crabs inhabiting the icy plains, adorable in their youth, but growing immense with age. They harbored a distaste for large creatures, deeming them unattractive and rejecting them outright. Initially, it had intended to seek out the fledgling mentioned by its kin, but had not anticipated encountering the young one so soon. Truly, it was so diminutive, but what did it eat? Presumably fruits, it surmised. Eager to provide a warm welcome, it resolved to gather an abundance of fruits that day. Yet, after circling the area, it found not a single one. Returning disheartened, it spotted the fledgling climbing a tree, nearly reaching the summit. Such a young one, struggling even to ascend a tree, it thought. Deciding to meet it at the top, it first wanted the fledgling to experience the thrill of heights. However, the youngling soon grew bored and prepared to descend. Alarmed, the bird hurriedly positioned itself behind her, perhaps startling her with its sudden appearance. But observing the fledgling's resilience, it assumed she was unharmed. Moreover, she had adorned her head with feathers, surely a sign of affection. Thus, presenting her with one was only fitting. After all, it prided itself on being a generous bird. Then it plucked a tail feather from its plumage and offered it to her. She accepted it. Yet why didn't she adorn her hair with it? It even nudged her with its beak, but she remained oblivious. The challenges of communication. Even the bird sighed in frustration. So, it decided to intervene. At that moment, Gushi was utterly bewildered, her mind echoing with a lingering resonance, as if from a struck bowl. She never imagined the ice crystal bird boss would act in such an inexplicable manner. To her astonishment, it snatched back the feather it had just given her and proceeded to tuck it into her hair. Her gaze fixed on the dangling feather just over 30 centimeters before her eyes. Then, she looked up at the large bird, noticing the unmistakable pride and satisfaction gleaming in its eyes. So, was she being cared for by a bird? But the way it placed the feather was utterly peculiar. Under the bird's intense scrutiny, Gushi adjusted the feather's orientation, turning it backward so it no longer obstructed her view. With one issue resolved, what came next? She needed to descend, not stand there exchanging glances with this avian giant. Gaga? The ice crystal bird boss clearly sensed its charge's distraction and chirped twice, inquiring what was wrong. Gushi looked up at it and spoke gently. I need to go down now. What she truly wanted to say was, don't stop me. But the bird interpreted her words as, please take me down. Gaga. Seeing it flap its wings joyfully, she couldn't tell if it understood. However, it seemed more capable than the birds below and likely grasped her meaning. Having conveyed her intention to the ice crystal bird boss, she prepared to maneuver the spikes to descend. But before she could act, the bird seized her collar, lifted her up, and tossed her onto its neck. With a powerful beat of its wings, it dove straight downward. In the blink of an eye, Gushi found herself back on the ground. Having ridden the ice crystal bird boss's free taxi, she instinctively clutched its feathers. The bird, now serving as her chauffeur, lowered its head and stretched its neck, clearly seeking praise. For some reason, Gushi felt a pang of concern for the intelligence of this species. Yet, despite their simplicity, the ice crystal bird boss had been remarkably kind to her, and she wasn't one to be ungrateful. So, she stroked its neck, smoothing its feathers. Truth be told, the ice crystal bird's plumage, though silky, was icy cold and not particularly pleasant to the touch. Under normal circumstances, she wouldn't have chosen to caress it. Her ideal fluffy companion would have adorable, large eyes and a soft, cuddly texture, the kind that makes one feel euphoric upon burying their face in it, not this steely, rigid form. With a deadpan expression internally, Gushi continued petting it while pondering how to interact with them moving forward. Once on the ground, she noticed the other birds, now awake, gathering around her and chirping in unison. If it were merely ordinary quacking, it might have been tolerable, but each cry grew progressively louder, as if engaged in a contest where volume determined victory, pounding relentlessly in her head. Stop. Have you made any progress with the task I entrusted to you? She had only been apart from the foolish birds for a short while, so of course she knew there was no news yet. But to silence their incessant noise, she had no choice but to divert the conversation. Quack, 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 quack. The foolish birds resumed, yet this time was different. They arranged themselves in an orderly line, stretching their necks in unison toward the ice crystal bird boss. Gushi followed their gaze, turning her attention to the creature as well. Could the information lie with the ice crystal bird boss? Under the collective stare of the human and the avian flock, the ice crystal bird boss tilted its head in confusion and emitted a single quack. Immediately, the large and small birds erupted into a chorus of quacks. Though she could not comprehend their language, it was evident that the birds were communicating seamlessly. This cacophony persisted for approximately 5 minutes before finally subsiding, ending the clamor reminiscent of 1,000 ducks. The ice crystal bird boss detached itself from the quacking assembly and stood majestically before Gushi. Presumably aware that she could not decipher its vocalizations, it refrained from further noise and simply lowered its head. Puzzled but compliant, Gushi extended her hand as before, gently stroking its neck. This time, however, the ice crystal bird boss withdrew its neck and instead placed its massive head into her palm. The head was so substantial that one hand could not support it, prompting her to use both hands to cradle it. The weight of the avian head caused a slight strain in her forearms, yet she persevered, for she remained uncertain of the ice crystal bird boss's intentions. With its head steadied, the ice crystal bird boss revealed a satisfied expression in its dark, bead-like eyes. It then began to channel psychic energy toward Gushi's hands. Typically, such energy is intangible, but now she perceived a white radiance emanating from the bird, infused with this force. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of anticipation stirring within her for what the great bird was undertaking. After the light faded, the ice crystal bird boss lifted its head, and in Gushi's previously empty hands, an object materialized. It was a key, though to call it such seemed almost an exaggeration. This key resembled fragile shards of glass, as if it might crumble at any moment. Astonished, Gushi glanced from the key to the ice crystal bird boss. The bird gave a slight nod, emitted a soft quack, and urged her to swiftly secure the key. With a complex expression, Gushi looked at it and uttered a word of gratitude. Chapter 210. Key restoration. The journey of life is invariably fraught with twists and turns. Initially, Gushi had intended only a minor retaliation against the ice crystal bird. But under its repeated acts of goodwill, she found it impossible to in good conscience threaten the birds with starvation. Observing the innocent creatures preening their feathers, a peculiar sense of guilt washed over her. Gushi shook her head vigorously, as if to dispel the feeling. Now was not the moment to dwell on such matters. She needed to address the issue of the colossal door key first. The key the ice crystal bird boss had placed in her hand had shattered into fragments as fine as glass dust, rendering it utterly useless. She had to devise a way to either replicate or restore it. Moreover, with dusk approaching, she had to make her way back immediately. Gushi affectionately stroked the heads of several birds, bidding each a tender farewell. The birds escorted her out of the forest with reluctant fondness before taking flight. Throughout the journey, she had to handle the key with extreme caution. Unable to communicate with the ice crystal bird, she relied on its persistent reminders about proper care. This peculiar key could only be preserved using psychic energy and required a continuous supply to prevent disintegration. Withdrawing the energy would cause it to crumble instantly, yet even with it, excessive force could shatter it just as easily. When she attempted to store the key in her backpack, the game issued a warning. Fragile and valuable item. Keep it on your person. Thus, she had no choice but to carry it openly in her palm. Safeguarding the key, she returned to her ship and headed straight for the workshop. Settling into a work chair, she began examining the key closely. With a manipulation of objects, Gushi levitated the key, enveloped in psychic energy, into the air. The shattered pieces floated unsteadily, swaying and bobbing. Typically, restoring broken items merely required repair, but given that even preserving this key demanded psychic power, she surmised that mending it would too. Unfortunately, she had no expertise in this area, and with time pressing, consulting an expert seemed the swiftest solution. Stowing the key away, she activated the special dimension of the auction invitation. The quickest path to knowledge was to consult the Book of Greed directly. With enough gold coins, it would provide satisfactory answers. Having visited it recently, she entered the space to find the book absorbing nutrients from psychic flowers. Whether it was her imagination or not, it seemed displeased at her arrival. What do you want? The Book of Greed expressed clear disdain, but upon noticing the item in her hand, its attitude shifted dramatically. Wait, the aura of that object feels familiar. Bring it closer for inspection. Obligingly, Gushi approached and presented the shattered key. The book circled it twice, clicking its tongue before remarking, "To gather all the fragments in such a state is no small feat." She nodded in agreement, intending to extract more information. So, what is the purpose of this key? However, her subtle probing did not sway the book. This item holds significant value, and the information fee won't be cheap. But I assure you, purchasing this knowledge will be worth every coin. Indeed, this was the essence of information's worth. Once again, the book had her cornered, truly a master of commerce. Recalling Gushi's previous tactics, the Book of Greed spoke before she could. This time is different. Your usual methods won't work. If you wish to purchase, you must demonstrate sincerity. Gushi nodded indifferently, for she valued the secrets behind this key far more than the money. Thus, she dispensed with pleasantries and inquired directly, "I seek the method to restore this key." Since their collaboration began, the duo had always assessed matters and set prices accordingly. After learning the clue from Gushi, the Book of Greed rustled through its pages noisily, only halting after a considerable while. "Found it. The price for the information is 1,000 gold coins." Gushi exclaimed, "What? So expensive?" The Book of Greed retorted, "Will you buy it?" At this point, was there any need for deliberation? Though it pained her heart, the expense was unavoidable. "I'll buy it," she declared. With the deal sealed, the Book of Greed's pages began to flip wildly. This transaction differed from prior ones. Instead of verbal relay, it seemed to be inscribing something using psychic energy. Gushi stood by patiently, refraining from interruption, aware of the book's fondness for such energy, hence the exorbitant demand. Time slipped away minute by minute. Gushi had no inkling of what was being written, and after nearly 10 minutes, it remained unfinished. She glanced back intermittently, hoping for a swift conclusion. Finally, after half an hour, the book announced done. Approaching, Gushi asked what took so long. "Are you preparing to restore the key now? Strive, for survival becomes easier." The Book of Greed uttered mysteriously. Fully comprehending its implied meaning, Gushi felt exasperated. With only the two of them present, why the pretense? It simply meant she had to handle everything beyond the information herself. The book sighed in imitation of her and added, "All right, I'll transmit the content to you. Digest it on your own." "All this secrecy," she muttered, yet her body betrayed curiosity as she drew closer. The book gently pressed against her forehead, and suddenly, a burst of white light erupted. Once the brief radiance faded, the book withdrew. Gushi, sensing what it had left behind, felt bewildered. "What is this?" The Book of Greed replied, the answer you seek. Do your best. Perceiving a tangled thread in her mind that resisted integration with her own psychic energy, Gushi remained confused. She stared at the book, her eyes clearly demanding an explanation. With another human-like sigh, it said, "After you leave, unravel the entire thread, and you'll understand. Some knowledge can only be grasped intuitively, not conveyed in words, making it impossible for a book to elucidate." Gushi departed half convinced and half doubting. Exiting the special space, she returned to her workshop, reclining on the sofa as she pondered the Book of Greed's words. When the Book of Greed abruptly thrust a mass of spiritual energy in her mind moments ago, Gushi instinctively resisted. Yet her own spiritual essence clung tenaciously to that tangled thread, compelling her to allow its entry. Reflecting on the incident, she turned over on the sofa and murmured under her breath, hoping this expenditure would prove worthwhile. Closing her eyes, she began to unravel the intricate thread. However, this thread was uniquely woven by the Book of Greed. The moment she touched its origin, a deluge of unclaimed spiritual information surged into her consciousness. Chapter 211. Information Unraveling. Explosive data inundated Gushi's mind, making her head feel pounds heavier with the sheer weight of knowledge. Beads of cold sweat dotted her forehead, her face contorted in agony. Despite the torment, she persevered in absorbing the thread's contents. Within the thread lay only the transaction details, devoid of extraneous information. The Book of Greed hadn't even disclosed the key's name. Yet, in accordance with her request, it provided clues for mending the key. To repair or reshape it, the bearer must employ spiritual energy through a specialized method. Gushi had previously surmised that spiritual energy was involved, but the precise technique eluded her. Now, the Book of Greed's insights filled that void. According to its guidance, two methods existed for key restoration. The first required achieving SSS-level spiritual energy, enabling direct melting and reshaping. The key retained a memory of its form, automatically restoring itself post-fusion. This approach was straightforward and efficient, yet attaining SSS level seemed an unattainable dream. Based on the Deep Sea Clan's records, few among them possessed such prowess, rendering this method impractical. The second method demanded refining one's spiritual energy to a fineness surpassing silk threads, using these delicate strands to stitch together the shattered fragments. However, mere threads weren't sufficient. It necessitated another skill, the ability to pierce minuscule holes into the key. Aware of her limitations, the Book of Greed thoughtfully provided training insights and a designated practice space for the second method. The subsequent sections detailed exhaustive tutorials on thinning spiritual threads and drilling with spiritual energy, a level of meticulousness that was both awe-inspiring and daunting. Her gratitude toward the Book of Greed was, of course, utterly sarcastic. Temporarily disengaging from the thread, Gushi felt an overwhelming urge to overturn a table. Her mind in turmoil. If the key had shattered into 5, 6, or even a dozen pieces, it might have been manageable. But reduced to dust, hundreds or thousands of fragments, how could she possibly mend it? This alternative seemed nearly impossible as well. The mere thought tempted her to give up entirely. She had squandered 1,000 gold coins on this information, only to find it useless. With 1,000 gold, she could have acquired numerous treasures, expanded her vessel significantly, or freely indulged in a small-scale auction. With 1,000 gold coins, one could purchase some fine treasure from the Sea Wraith's esteemed collection. Yet it all vanished, squandered as if tossed into the abyss. Gushi's heart ached over the loss of her fortune, her mind growing increasingly hazy in a whirl of dizziness. Amidst the chaos, a sudden surge of determination jolted her upright. No, that was 1,000 gold coins. She must reclaim them by any means necessary. Excluding the final day, she still had over a day remaining. With relentless effort, it should be achievable. No, it had to be. Before taking action, she fueled herself with fervor, determined to maintain that heightened state of resolve. Fully aware of her circumstances, she knew that to reach her goal, she must train without rest or respite. The coming dozens of hours promised arduous toil, so before enduring such hardship, she treated herself to a lavish feast. After devouring the meal she had prepared, she began untangling the intricate threads left by the greedy tome. Taking a deep breath, she immersed herself into her spiritual realm. The process of thread extraction bore some resemblance to the skill of object manipulation. Previously, When employing object manipulation, she only knew that advancing her spiritual level increased the number of objects she could control, with each object tethered by a single strand. Back then, as she manipulated objects, that strand naturally emerged, and she had not pondered it further. Now, from the tangled threads, she learned that the thickness of this strand could indeed be regulated. However, thread extraction differed from object manipulation in that it involved only a single thread, which had to be severed from her original spiritual essence. This severance was distinct from the spiritual energy expended in skills. The latter could dissipate and thus be restored, whereas severance required a permanent reduction in her current spiritual capacity, essentially damaging her upper limit. There was, however, a remedy, reclaiming the severed spiritual energy. The precise consequences remained unclear to Gu Shi. For now, she focused solely on mastering the technique. If worst came to worst, she could simply destroy the key after unlocking the door. Armed with this understanding, she commenced her training. As these techniques were governed by sheer willpower, they demanded immense mental fortitude. Gu Shi trained incessantly, never halting. This was her first encounter with such intricate, high-intensity practice. When her spiritual energy depleted, she consumed replenishing elixirs. When exhaustion set in, she performed hypnotic massages within her mind. She could not afford to stop, for pausing would mean her 1,000 gold coins were truly lost forever. She drank the spiritual recovery potions as if they were water, with empty bottles piling up around her. Occasionally, the octopus servant would enter, tidy the litter-strewn floor, and retreat, casting a worried glance at its fish-like master before departing. The threads Gu Shi extracted evolved from the thickness of ropes to that of fingers, then progressed through yarn, cotton thread, fishing line, silk thread, and beyond, until she finally succeeded in splitting a single strand to the fineness of 16 divisions of a silkworm's silk. Not enough. Still not enough. Gu Shi repeatedly cautioned herself within her consciousness. How could something still visible to the naked eye penetrate the shattered remnants of a key? Moreover, this thread needed not only to be fine, but also resilient. What if it snapped midway through her task? Time and again, she faced failure, persisting in her repetitions until, as dawn broke, she finally achieved her goal. Emerging from her mental realm, Gu Shi knew all too well that the flow of time there differed vastly from the external world. Though merely a dozen hours had passed outside, she had endured countless epochs within her mind. Initially, the passage of time in that inner space was not accelerated, but as she honed her techniques and sharpened her focus, her progress surged forward exponentially. After accomplishing this minor milestone, Gu Shi withdrew her psychic energy at last. She lay still for a long while, her body stiff and weary, deciding to replenish herself with a meal and some rest before continuing. Inadvertently, she kicked an empty potion bottle at her feet, sending it clattering into the octopus that had just entered the room carrying a trash bag. Upon seeing its owner awake, the octopus's eyes rippled with wave-like patterns of excitement. All right, Gu Shi murmured, patting its head. I'll take a bath first. You prepare the meal. After eating, I must press on. With that, she headed to the bathroom, urgently needing to unwind her mind for the arduous training ahead. Settling into the bathtub, Gu Shi closed her eyes and reflected on the next phase of her regimen. Piercing holes. She sighed softly, having just scaled one peak only to face another looming before her. Drilling into the crumbled key fragments demanded not only precision, but also formidable penetrating force. Success in this endeavor would not only restore the key, but also amplify her combat skills exponentially. Though the challenge was daunting, the potential rewards fueled her anticipation. Chapter 212. Completion of the restoration to bore holes into the fragments. She required correspondingly delicate tools. The psychic thread she had meticulously refined proved ideal for the task. Resilient yet pliant, they now needed an infusion of rigidity. Drawing a single strand from her psychic core, Gu Shi began to temper it, gradually straightening and hardening the filament. She attempted to guide it through the broken key, but upon contact, the tip of the thread softened and curled. Not hard enough, she pondered, touching the tip with her fingertip and feeling a sharp sting. Assessing the current firmness, she calmly retracted her hand and resumed refining the thread. Several more attempts yielded similar outcomes, yet despite falling short of her ultimate aim, she gleaned significant insights. Confident that the thread's hardness was steadily intensifying. Despite such hardness remaining impenetrable, it was likely due to insufficient force applied. However, enhancing force is tied to one's attributes, making rapid improvement improbable in a short span. Gushi fixed her gaze blankly on the fine thread, when suddenly the concept of a drill came to mind, and she resolved to attempt it herself. First, she crafted a slender filament, then utilized her psychic energy to set it into rapid rotation. The uncut thread remained connected to her mental sea, while she manipulated its outer end to spin swiftly. Yet, the faster it whirled, the more she sensed the turbulent stirrings within her spiritual realm. That a single thread could exert such a profound, all-encompassing influence was something she had never anticipated. Hastily, she ceased the motion, pausing briefly to allow the mental sea to calm. This phenomenon was truly peculiar. When manipulating objects, no matter how the psychic ropes contorted, her mental sea remained undisturbed. Why then did the fine thread evoke such a vivid sensation? Perhaps she could first form a psychic sphere as an intermediary, then draw the thread through it. With this idea roughly formed in her mind, Gushi embarked on her experimental endeavor. Separating a psychic sphere from her mental sea was a task she had mastered, but extracting a thread from within it proved unfamiliar. After numerous attempts, she finally managed to produce the delicate filament. Now that the thread was drawn, the next step was to set it spinning. Compared to before, this time she could simply rotate the psychic sphere, a motion that felt more intuitive than manipulating the thread directly. Focusing on the sphere, she soon achieved her objective. Suppressing her elation, Gushi concentrated intently, bringing the rotating thread close to the key fragment. More precision, even finer, she reminded herself inwardly. With limited time and opportunities, she had to seize each one diligently. Upon the first contact, the spinning psychic thread, slightly misaligned, ground off a corner of the key fragment. The resulting powder drifted through the air, shimmering translucently under the sunlight. Though a misstep, the thread's extreme fineness minimized damage, preserving the key's overall integrity. Learning from this error, Gushi closed her eyes, reopened them calmly, and consumed a psychic restoration potion before resuming her work. She meticulously stitched together the fragments along their edges, her speed increasing with growing proficiency. After hours of intense effort, she finally restored the key to its complete form. Severing the psychic connection to the thread, a strange sensation washed over her, inexplicably quickening her heartbeat and evoking a sense of loss. Once the feeling subsided, a lingering unease remained. Shaking her head to dismiss the oddity, Gushi turned her attention to verifying the repair, following the method described in the greedy tome. She gradually withdrew the spiritual energy enveloping the key, proceeding only after ensuring it wouldn't shatter, continuing this delicate process until every trace of her psychic force had dissipated. Even after her energy vanished, the fractured key remained suspended in midair. Soon, she observed faint golden lights emerging from its cracks. The key was so severely damaged that the radiance eventually enveloped it entirely. Encased in this golden glow, a transparent halo adorned with rainbow patterns began to revolve around the key. As Gushi reached out to touch it, a game notification arrived before her fingers made contact. Game prompt: Key repair in progress, countdown, 010000. She couldn't help but frown at the message. The Greedy Book's guide had omitted any mention of a repair countdown after mending. She had naively assumed it would be usable immediately post-repair, realizing now she had oversimplified things. Fortunately, the wait wasn't prolonged, and since she couldn't access the island today, she resolved to maximize her efficiency tomorrow. Setting the key matter aside for the moment, Gushi opened her personal attribute panel. During the repair process, she had noticed a significant boost in her spiritual energy, and it was time to assess the results. The frigid weather had persisted for 18 days, and she had been stagnant at B level for some time. Advancing from B to A required 20,000 points. Before the key repair, she was already past the halfway mark. Yet in less than a day post-repair, her progress surged by over 6,000 points. Now, the upgrade bar stood at 17893,20000, placing her on the cusp of reaching A level. Pleased with this outcome, Gushi acknowledged that while it was merely a byproduct of the key's restoration, the effect was far more substantial than relying on potions or items for spiritual enhancement. At this rate, she estimated reaching A level in 2 to 3 days, after which she planned to test her skills at the arena. Closing the attribute panel, she reminded herself that despite completing the key task, training couldn't be neglected. Yesterday, She had skipped attribute drills to focus on the repair, and she vowed not to repeat that delay today. Gathering her resolve, she dragged her weary body to the training room to begin her regimen. The day passed in a whirlwind of activity. After finishing her training the previous evening, Gushi had collapsed in his sleep without even eating dinner. Determined to reach the island early today, her octopus companion transformed into an alarm clock, tugging its exhausted owner from the floor. Its soft tentacles brushed against her face, disturbing her slumber. With a groan, she yanked at the octopus's limbs, tossed it aside, and rose with prominent dark circles under her eyes. Short on time, she had no leisure to change clothes, and, under the octopus's insistent nudging, hastily swallowed a few bites of food before setting off for the island. As Gushi stepped outside, a bitingly cold wind swept over her, its chill sharpening her previously muddled senses. How had the weather shifted again? Chapter 213, The Stubborn Door. After days of gusty winds and light snow, the skies had finally cleared. Though the sunny days brought frigid temperatures, they were perfect for outdoor activities. Now, the winds had picked up once more, and she wondered if they would hinder her exploration of the island. Urged on by the octopus, Gushi departed and soared toward the small island within the eternal warm sea. The moment she entered the sea's domain, the harsh winds ceased entirely. She couldn't help but glance back at the boundary line, feeling as though this area was a secluded paradise. Before long, one of the ice crystal birds approached her and began to accompany her on her journey. Although she was unsure of the fate of the bird that had fallen into the water earlier, the friendly diplomacy from the foolish birds 2 days prior had shifted her perspective on them. Regrettably, she had left the ice crystal fruits on the ship. Otherwise, she would have offered one to the bird now. As Gushi continued flying, more birds gathered around her. By the time she neared the island, all the foolish birds except their leader had assembled. To her surprise, there were not 5, but 6 birds, the extra one being the very bird she had previously struck into the water. This once mocking bird seemed to have been disciplined by its peers, shedding its former arrogance and blending in harmoniously with the group. Gushi deduced this from the fact that its head feathers had been plucked out, transforming its fluffy appearance into a bald one. Though it felt somewhat disrespectful to label it as bald, it was the undeniable truth. Baldness was not unfamiliar to Gushi. She had encountered it in various forms, from the middle-aged men in her old neighborhood struggling to support their families, to old Jiang who persistently used ginger to nurture his hair, and even her high school math teacher who had fretted over students' grades to the point of hair loss. Thus, she merely observed it inwardly, without letting any mockery show on her face. Upon landing, Gushi found the ice crystal bird leader waiting by the shore. Spotting her descent, it enveloped her in a grand embrace with its large wings and pressed its massive head affectionately against her face. Her features contorted under the pressure, and she inwardly rolled her eyes in exasperation. While she adored fluffy creatures, this oversized avian's version of fluffiness was nothing like that of a small kitten. Seeing no sign of the bird releasing her, Gushi pushed it away firmly. Noticing its wounded expression, she surmised that the bird likely saw her as a youngling. As a full-grown adult who paled in comparison to the giants of this world, she preferred to avoid such delightful misunderstandings. I have tasks to attend to. I'll catch up with you all later, Gushi announced before heading off on her own. Now, opening the colossal gate stands as the foremost priority. All other matters can be temporarily set aside. As for the earlier notion of luring those birds back, she is currently occupied, and that plan shall only be pursued if spare time permits. Under the pitiful gazes of the avian creatures, Gushi strode resolutely toward the deep cavern without a backward glance. Having previously marked the location, she found it with ease. Swiftly, she located the cave entrance and, without hesitation, leaped downward. Gushi descended in serene silence, reaching the ground after a few minutes. The surroundings remained enveloped in profound stillness, yet surprisingly, she no longer felt the trepidation and anxiety that had gripped her upon her first arrival. Humans are such peculiar beings. Knowing what lay ahead and the distance to it, she harbored no fear, a remarkable psychological state that enabled her to conquer the dread of the abyssal darkness. Even without the illumination of the transparent panel, she can now traverse this obscurity with equanimity. However, mental acceptance is one thing, and practical action another. Calmly, Gushi retrieved the shark pearl from her backpack. Casting a gentle glow that faintly pierced the deep gloom, she advanced steadily, halting only upon reaching the immense door. During her prior visit, She had perceived it through psychic senses. Now, under the shark pearl's light, she scrutinized the grand portal anew. Visual perception, compared to psychic visibility, conveys a more palpable sense of atmosphere. Previously, she had not realized through her psychic sight just how imposing this door truly was, a majesty likely intended to deter some visitors. But it held no power to intimidate her. Stepping onto the spikes, Gushi ascended to the keyhole of the great door. She stared at it for a few seconds before drawing out the key. The moment she inserted it, the entire door's runes ignited with light. Startled, Gushi paused her movements. Seconds later, not only did the runes glow, but they began to shift in a patterned motion, darting about erratically as their trajectories grew increasingly restless. After a brief wait, the door remained shut. Moreover, the chains that had bound it started rattling violently, as if poised to abandon their duty of restraint and assail Gushi. She gazed at the key in astonishment. Could it be that this key was not meant for this place? Hovering in the air, she examined the key closely but quickly dismissed the thought. If the key were truly unusable, the runes and chains would not have reacted at all. So, it must require turning, she surmised. Observing the escalating chaos of the runes and chains, Gushi did not hesitate long. Though aware that the key likely had a specific method of activation, she had no time to ponder alternative solutions. She attempted a slight twist of the key. Instantly, the chains on the great door shattered into fragments, hurtling toward her. Gushi swiftly sidestepped, and with a deafening crash, the chains missed their mark, striking the ground instead. Yet its assault was far from over. All the iron chains aligned in midair, forming a relentless queue as they surged toward Gushi one after another. She could only devote her entire being to evading the onslaught, utterly unable to attend to the task of opening the door. TSK, the key was right before her eyes. Yet she couldn't even touch it, a feeling truly suffocating. Object manipulation. Since the chains were attacking her, she might as well take control directly. Under her manipulation, the chains immediately halted their assault, and at a glance, it was clear they had lost their combat capability, drifting aimlessly in the air. But if only it were that simple. Gushi, now manipulating them, was drenched in sweat, acutely aware that these chains were draining her psychic energy. She attempted to sever the connection, but the chains had somehow anchored themselves firmly to her psyche. In this unyielding grip, her mental sea felt as if it were being violently tugged at. Her energy was depleting rapidly. If she didn't devise a solution soon, she would likely faint within 2 minutes. Without hesitation, she retrieved a vial of the finest psychic restoration potion and downed it in one gulp. She had to endure now to find a way out. Chapter 214. Assistance with the high-grade psychic restoration potion coursing through her, Gushi felt her mental state stabilize considerably. Keeping her eyes fixed on the keyhole of the massive door, she engaged in a tug-of-war with the clinging chains. Though she couldn't break free from them, she could still direct their movement. As long as the chains remained non-aggressive, she could swiftly advance toward the giant door. A fleeting thought crossed her mind, and she propelled herself forward. If the chains had been triggered by the key's rotation, then perhaps the solution lay with the key itself. Reversing the key's turn seemed improbable now, but she could seek an alternative method to open the door quickly. Once the giant door was successfully unlocked, attacks like the chains would pose no threat. Gushi concentrated, rapidly analyzing the situation in her mind as countless details and fragments of information flashed and reshuffled repeatedly. With each successive hypothesis, her expression grew increasingly grave over time. What was it? How could she open the door? The floating runes on the giant door shifted at an accelerating pace, and now the cluster of light orbs blazed intensely in the dark environment. They converged as if gathering energy, preparing for the next explosive wave. The brilliance of these orbs was so overwhelming that it easily obscured everything else. The blinding light forced Gushi to shield her eyes, and as she tilted her head, she inadvertently caught sight of faint, dark red glimmers. Huh? What were those? She didn't overlook this subtle detail. The dim red spots weren't emanating from a single location, but appeared as faint points of light in multiple positions around the keyhole. Suddenly, a realization dawned on her. She hastily retrieved the diagram she had drawn the day before. How could she have forgotten? Back then, she had noticed discrepancies in the runes here compared to others and had meticulously marked them. Unfolding the parchment, she scanned it swiftly. This rune differs from its original position. Gushi furrowed her brows in consternation. Though uncertain when these peculiar symbols had been rearranged, she surmised it was likely connected to opening the door. There were 12 unfamiliar runes arranged in a circular pattern, adorned with rather bizarre designs. Had she not sketched these patterns earlier? Attempting to reconstruct them from mere memory would have been sheer folly. Fortunately, fortune favored her. Summoning her spikes, Gushi swiftly pressed one against a rune, intending to shift it back to its prior place. Yet the symbols remained immovable. Realizing the runes could not be displaced, she promptly altered her approach, touching each one sequentially, starting from a specific emblem. As her finger met the final rune, the luminous clusters of symbols behind her gradually dimmed and subsided. Moreover, the chains that had been draining her mental energy now ceased their relentless absorption. Along with the waning threats, her frantic heartbeat began to calm. Temporarily freed from the assault, she leaned weakly against the wall, retrieving a high-grade mental restoration potion from her pack. Honestly, by the time she activated the last rune, she was nearly petrified with fear. It was a heart-stopping moment where she feared all was lost. Gazing at the colossal door, Gushi closed her eyes with a frown. Although the door remained shut, the situation was at least improving. Both the chains and runes seemed to have hit a pause, posing little threat now. Slowly, she straightened up, tapping her chest over her heart with her left hand before exhaling deeply. Resuming control, she directed the spikes toward the keyhole. Her key was still lodged there. She had to persist in unlocking the door. Returning to the keyhole, she noticed the previously dim crimson specks had vanished, replaced by the precise sequence of runes matching the blueprint. Utterly perplexed about how to operate the key, she could only attempt to twist it. Regrettably, no matter how she turned it, nothing in the surrounding space responded. The chains, runes, and light all had halted, as if the massive door were merely a broken lock. With no hints or clues, Gushi grew increasingly agitated, pounding on the door in frustration. She couldn't help but curse under her breath, wondering if it was truly defective. How could it refuse to open? The thought of wasting 1,000 gold coins and the effort spent repairing the key overnight fueled her anxiety. Suddenly, a series of cawing sounds pierced the dead silence, offering a sliver of solace to her troubled mind. Gushi turned to see, illuminated by the shark pearl's glow, none other than the ice crystal bird boss flapping its grand wings as it approached. "Why have you come?" she inquired. The bird cawed twice more, then pecked at the keyhole before directing its calls toward Gushi. "I've tried, but it won't open," she responded. Though Gushi maintained a composed facade, inwardly she refused to admit defeat. No sooner had her words faded than she witnessed the ice crystal bird boss anxiously flapping its massive wings against the colossal door, then pecking furiously at the keyhole. While the creature strove to convey its message, Gushi stood aside, utterly baffled. This communication barrier had thoroughly stumped the bird. It let out 2 more raucous squawks, this time exceptionally loud, which to Gushi sounded like reproaches for her incompetence. With a resigned sigh, she shrugged her shoulders, only to be met with the bird's exasperated glare of disappointment. Dismissing its gaze, Gushi fixed her eyes on the keyhole and addressed it. "Do you have a solution?" Squawk. The ice crystal bird boss shook its head, urgently drawing her closer with its wing before gently tapping her forehead, emitting a wave of psychic energy. A refreshing coolness permeated her entire body, and she felt her previously depleted mental strength gradually replenishing. Wide-eyed, she attempted to push the bird away, eager to proceed inside rather than linger to recover, especially since she could rely on potions for that, and wasting time here was not an option. Sensing her struggle, the bird angrily smacked her with its wing. The impact was sharp and resonant, leaving Gushi momentarily stunned. Even after the bird finished its restorative efforts, she remained in a daze until another swift wing slap jolted her back to awareness. So, she was being disciplined by a bird? Suppressing her fury, she glared at the creature, only to find it even more incensed, repeatedly beating the door with its wings and pecking at the key. In that moment, Gushi felt utterly disoriented, unsure where to place her hands and feet. Gazing at the enraged bird, a dry throat seized her as she saw the flames of anger blazing in its eyes. Chapter 215, Door Within a Door. She had no outlet for her frustration. Despite being the one struck, why did she feel a sense of defeat? Squawk. The ice crystal bird boss urged her on again. Reluctantly, Gushi reached out to turn the key. Squawk. The bird's beak was like a mother's slap, seeing the fledgling persist with the old method. It pecked her hand in a fit of rage. Gushi winced, withdrawing her hand and staring at the red mark, a wave of inexplicable wichi washing over her. Squawk! The bird tapped the door with its wing and pecked at the key once more. Observing its fiery anger, Gushi recalled how it had restored her psychic energy earlier. Could it be using psychic power? A sudden realization dawned on her. Previously, when attempting to open the door, she had avoided any psychic contact due to the chain attacks and her habitual caution. Could this door actually be opened with psychic energy? No. No. Gushi shook her head inwardly. That assumption must be mistaken. If she had attempted to use psychic energy from the start, she would likely have been completely drained by now. If she could employ it at this moment, it was surely due to the temporarily stilled runes and chains. But then, why hadn't the Ice Phoenix boss simply infused its own psychic energy to open the door? Given that it had replenished her reserves, its psychic power undoubtedly surpassed hers. Yet, even in its agitated state, it hadn't assisted in opening the door. Could it be that only she was capable of unlocking it now? Suddenly, Gushi's eyes sparkled with realization. How could she have forgotten? The binding of this key had transferred from the Ice Phoenix boss to her. Perhaps it wasn't unwilling to help, but rather unable to. With this logic clarified, her gaze toward the Ice Phoenix boss softened with affection. Observing its tilted head and puzzled expression, she smiled silently and gently stroked its feathers. Then, she turned the key and channeled her psychic energy into it. As the energy reached a certain threshold, her vision abruptly plunged into darkness. When her sight returned, she found herself enveloped in a shadowy expanse. Upon closer inspection, she realized that beyond the first door lay another, much smaller one. Drip, drip, the sound of water echoed from an unseen source, falling into an unknown place. Faint, rippling waves responded to Gushi's hearing with delicate murmurs. Suddenly, a vortex materialized at the center of the door before her, rotating steadily in a clockwise motion. Its pace unhurried yet unceasing. Gushi held her breath. This sensation felt strangely familiar. The eerie distortion of space hinted at yet another realm beyond. Slowly, she extended her psychic energy toward the vortex. Should she follow its flow or resist it? In such moments, intuition was her best guide. Trusting her instincts, she directed her energy counterclockwise. The convergence of her psychic force with the vortex's rotation subtly began to halt its motion. Click! The sound of the mystical door unlocking resonated like a celestial melody, allowing a sliver of light to seep through the crack. However, this amount of psychic energy was insufficient to fully open the door. She poured more of her reserves into it, rapidly depleting the recently restored power. Gritting her teeth against the throbbing headache, she consumed several vials of high-grade psychic recovery elixirs. Fixing her gaze intently on the narrow opening, she strained as if to wrench it wider. Now she understood why the Ice Phoenix boss had replenished her energy. With her current level, merely prying the door ajar was a strenuous effort. Had she been in her earlier, battle-worn state, she would have surely collapsed here before long. Gratitude swelled within her for the motherly bird, nurturing her as if she were its own fledgling. Wiping the residual liquid from her lips, Gushi continued to impede the vortex's flow with her unwavering psychic energy. Gradually, as she began to feel disoriented, the door finally opened just wide enough for her to slip through sideways. Gushi took a few steps forward and squeezed herself in. The moment she entered, she withdrew her psychic energy, and the door slammed shut with a resounding thud behind her. Without a backward glance, for she had no desire to look back, she pressed on. Beyond the door stretched a long corridor, unremarkable in its features save for the carpet beneath her feet. Carpets, in her experience from Mercury, were typically reserved for opulent and luxurious edifices trodden upon by the privileged. Yet whether this held true in this unfamiliar world, she could not be certain. The corridor spanned approximately 4 meters in width, flanked by distorted, swirling spaces that seemed to scream, "Do not touch me," in their shimmering ambiguity. Gushi advanced cautiously, her eyes scanning the surroundings as she moved. After roughly 5 minutes of this wary progression, she arrived at a vast hall. In stark contrast to the dimness of the corridor, the hall was bathed in ample light, though it was sparsely adorned. Aside from a conspicuously large box positioned at the far end, the space was utterly barren. That box, however, struck a chord of familiarity within her. She was convinced she had encountered something similar in her past experiences. Edging forward with care, she swiftly sifted through the archives of her memory. When she was merely 3 meters away, she halted abruptly. Ah, it dawned on her. It resembled a coffin. Involuntarily, the image of a sea phantom flitted through her mind. Why would a world like this necessitate coffins? If phantoms existed, what purpose could a coffin serve? Could it be housing a phantom within? No, no. Perhaps it was a vampire fish, slumbering deeply, awaiting a drop of blood to rouse it. A cascade of bizarre and supernatural thoughts raced through her mind, causing her to retreat a few steps in her distraction. Yet, many such containers held burial treasures, and the treasure map had indeed hinted at riches here. If it truly were a vampire fish, she reasoned, she could simply take the treasure without disturbing the creature. Ultimately, curiosity overpowered her fears, and she inched forward once more. Those mere 3 meters stretched into an agonizingly slow journey of several minutes, as the conflicting notions in her mind waged a fierce internal battle. Finally, she stood before the box. Boxes by nature possess lids, and so she pushed it open. Boxes are meant to contain things, and thus she peered inside with wide eyes. Upon seeing its contents, she snapped the lid shut with a sharp clap. Lifting her head, she attempted to recollect what she had just witnessed. So what had she seen? Let us rewind the moment in slow motion 10 times over. Lying within was a fish, or so she surmised, but not the vampire fish she had imagined. It lacked sharp fangs and dark hair. Instead, its locks were an icy blue, and with its eyes closed, their color remained a mystery. This was the most human-like fish goo she had encountered since arriving in this world. Were it not for the icy blue scales beneath its ears, she would have mistaken it for Sleeping Beauty. As it stood, it might as well be called a Sleeping Beauty fish. Chapter 216. The Sleeping Beauty fish. The fish lay in a deep slumber, its arms crossed over its chest, eyes and mouth tightly shut. Though she had only glimpsed it briefly, she could tell it was an extraordinarily beautiful creature. By human standards, it far surpassed the elegance of pearl fish. But was she so superficial? Certainly not. While she appreciated beauty, what truly stunned her and prompted her to instinctively close the box were the treasures accompanying the fish. Upon seeing the riches inside, a single thought flashed through her mind. She had struck it rich. The Sleeping Beauty fish could wait. Nothing would hinder her from reaping the legitimate fruits of her labor. Excellent, truly excellent. All her efforts to reach this place had not been in vain. Just the aura of those treasures made every hardship of the journey worthwhile. Though she couldn't identify most of the items, one stood out, the abyssal crystal. It was immense, far larger than the one she had seen with the sea wraith. To think of that once unattainable prize now lying before her eyes, she had to secure it to put her mind at ease. Clang! She unceremoniously pushed open the box lid once more, this time swinging it wide open instead of just a crack. The cover was flung to the ground. As for the Sleeping Beauty fish inside, well, it was utterly negligible, lost in such a profound slumber that it seemed the entire setup outside might exist solely to seal it away. Humming a tune she had worn thin with repetition, a melody she always sang off-key, she reveled in her joy. She knew her limitations well, so for the sake of everyone's well-being, she only sang when ecstatically happy and completely alone. Oh, and in this world, she added another condition. Not only must there be no people around, but no fish either. Perhaps her singing was so potent it could frighten even the aquatic beings. Time to get to work. Rubbing her hands in anticipation, she prepared for action. She grabbed the abyssal crystal, intent on stuffing it into her backpack. But the massive gem refused to budge. What was going on? Her euphoria plummeted. Could it be that these treasures were yet again beyond her grasp? This couldn't be a joke. No, she had to try again. Game prompt. This item is bound. The sudden notification sent a jolt through Gushi, and she swiftly withdrew her hand. If the abyssal crystal was bound, she would simply choose another treasure. With so many riches here, taking just one would make the trip worthwhile. However, ideals are splendid, but reality is stark. Gushi slid down beside the coffin-like box, utterly deflated. There truly wasn't a single item she could take. What kind of international jest is this? No, what kind of interplanetary jest is this? Among so many possessions, everything was bound. Who could be so utterly unscrupulous? Items only hold value when put to use. What worth do they have gathering dust here? And who exactly bound all these things? Could it be? Gushi glanced at the Sleeping Beauty fish, then abruptly stood up and circled around to where its head lay. Her restless little hands fidgeted, tugging at the fish's skin. The warm sensation startled her. making her quickly withdraw her hands. She hadn't expected the fish's body temperature to be so high. It was almost scalding, much like the fish itself. Pouting, Gushi stared at it for a long moment before finally bestowing a few hearty slaps upon it, kindly offering a wake-up service. With the wind force from the slaps, the scalding fish didn't feel quite as hot anymore. Despite several firm strikes, it showed no signs of stirring, so she could continue delivering more. After a few more attempts, perhaps because this particular fish was rather sturdy, her hands began to ache from the effort. She paused, shaking her hands while keeping her gaze fixed on the sleeping beauty fish. Killing it to claim its inheritance was certainly not an option. After all, any fish sealed away here was no ordinary creature. Bullying it or trying to rouse it seemed equally impractical. Her earlier slaps had only caused her own pain. What about trying some fish feed? If it truly was a fish, the feed ought to work. Such a formidable fish would surely require a substantial amount. But fortunately, she had plenty on hand. The fish feed came from completing quests. What she had on the ship was just a fraction, with a larger portion yet to be claimed. Since there was a need now, she could retrieve a batch to feed the fish. Deciding to tempt the fish, Gushi promptly opened the aquaculture system and withdrew a full 500 packs of fish feed. Staring at the small mountain of feed and then at the roughly 2-meter-long sleeping beauty fish, she wondered if it would overeat. Oh, never mind. With no other options for now, she'd just go ahead and feed it. Feeding a recumbent fish wasn't easy, so with great effort, she dragged it out of its container and propped it semi-upright against the side. A comatose fish couldn't eat on its own, so Gushi reluctantly pried open its mouth. But with so much feed, she couldn't keep opening its mouth each time. Thus, she purchased a shark bone from the marketplace, intending to prop its jaws apart. However, the mighty jaws of Sleeping Beauty fish were no match for a mere shark bone. As soon as she placed the bone, the fish's mouth snapped shut with a sharp crack, breaking the bone in two. Seriously, your teeth are just too impeccable. Gushi stared in astonishment at the clattering bones that had fallen, feeling profoundly grateful for her earlier caution in avoiding the slumbering mermaid's teeth. Left with no alternative, she purchased another piece of mysterious iron. With a sharp crack, it shattered into 2 fragments, bearing clear tooth marks. Unyielding, Gushi borrowed a shark's golden bone. As anticipated, it merely produced a heap of debris. If hardness failed, perhaps softness would suffice. Thus, fabric it was, but with a tearing sound. The cloth frayed into strips. How had that happened? Exasperated by the mermaid's refusal to yield to either approach, Gushi kicked it in a fit of pique, only to recoil from the impact. How absurdly rigid this creature was. A sudden spark of insight illuminated her mind. Why squander her own resources when a ready solution lay before her? Her gaze fixed on a mermaid's delicate hand. She lifted it, bent the fingers, pinched the chin, and shoved it into the mouth. Mission accomplished. Though a trickle of blood emerged from the mermaid's hand, it seemed inconsequential, right? With the mermaid's hand propping the jaw open, Gushi directly poured fish feed into its mouth. Yet, mere pouring wasn't enough. The dry pellets wouldn't be swallowed without assistance. She then examined the mermaid's neck and decided to pat it gently to facilitate the passage of food. Aware of the method's absurdity, she acknowledged that this world defied common sense. To her surprise, this seemingly foolish idea actually worked. Thus, the slumbering mermaid consumed bag after bag of fish feed mechanically. Observing that over 300 bags had been ingested without any system notification, Gushi deduced that this indeed was a fish, and the feed's efficacy was undeniable. The lack of alert simply indicated insufficient quantity. Press on. Ding dong, fish binding in progress. Fish binding successful. Gushi, what had she just heard? Had the world gone mad? Chapter 217. It turned out to be a sea beast. Binding? She doubted her ears. If memory served, only ordinary fish and sea beasts could be bound, while deep-sea races required building rapport and friendship. Her gaze drifted skeptically to the half-reclining fish on the ground. Frankly, she saw no resemblance to a sea beast. With its petite frame, it hardly seemed formidable. Even accounting for variations among sea beasts, this appeared more like a genetic anomaly. Visions of a bouncing octopus like a rubber ball and a sleek, wandering stingray flashed through her mind. Comparing them to this slumbering mermaid, a sour, lemon-like bitterness tinged her mood. She scrutinized it again, her uncertainty mounting. Could this truly be a new species of sea beast, and not some novel form of human? Regrettably, no matter how deeply she doubted, The binding notification of the fish-raising system could not be falsified, and excessive skepticism was futile. Gushi opened the system panel, which displayed the fish's details. Name, 305. Species, sea beast ice shield fish. Taming progress, 1. Interaction 503. Feeding 503. Appetite, 20. Well, this was indeed a premium specimen. Beyond other aspects, the taming progress gained from fixed interactions and feedings was notably lower than that of ordinary fish. And what of this appetite? It surpassed even that of an octopus. Though merely official system data, it seemed this fish might be another glutton. Having been here for so long, it must be famished. Would it start foraging for food upon awakening? Once bound by the system, regardless of its prior state, the fish would recover and become her exclusive reserve. So she harbored no fear of it causing harm. Moreover, this fish bore an almost human-like appearance. Calling it 305 or ice shield fish felt too impersonal. Thus she resolved to bestow a name. After a moment's contemplation, Gushi entered a simple, memorable name, Ace. Ace, derived from ice, as the fish was discovered in this icy wilderness, perfectly matching its essence. In the taming phase, limited information was disclosed. After renaming it, she closed the panel. With a novel reserve fish now in her possession, curiosity spurred Gushi to gently poke its cheek with her index finger. In doing so, she realized she had forgotten to remove the fish's hand from its mouth. To make a favorable impression upon its imminent awakening, she discreetly withdrew the hand. As her fingers brushed against the fish's, its fluttering eyelids startled her. Her hands recoiled as if electrified, followed by a powerful psychic shockwave radiating from the fish. The intense mental force compelled Gushi to raise her arms in defense, simultaneously enveloping herself in a psychic shield. Upon awakening, the fish's head hair cascaded visibly to the ground, transforming from pristine white to a glacial blue, emitting waves of frigid air. Frost began to cling to its eyelashes, crystallizing and falling like scattered stardust with each blink. Its golden, full-moon pupils gleamed with vitality upon opening, as if a soul had reclaimed its vessel. Yet at first glance, Gushi was nearly terrified. This fish, though possessing 2 eyes, seemed to have not 1, but 2 pupils in each, compound eyes. How alarming! And the sheer magnitude of its psychic energy was staggering. The mere gust of its mental force threatened to sweep her away. Of course, it wasn't just Gushi at risk of being blown aside, but her fish feed as well. As previously noted, no fish can resist the allure of feed. If one shows no interest, it simply isn't a true fish. This ironclad rule also applies to the ice shield fish. The moment it awoke, its gaze remained fixed upon the fish feed. In its drowsy state earlier, it had sensed an unusual creature approaching, prompting an instinctual release of psychic energy. Now, fully conscious, it felt an intense affinity for this being that bore a striking resemblance to itself, a connection seemingly emanating from the very soul. Though it yearned to draw closer to the peculiar entity, a more pressing matter lay before it, the pile of sustenance. In a swift motion, it darted to the food, snatching the fish pellets and stuffing them into its mouth. Witnessing the fish's voracious eating style, Gushi was astounded. She knew the creature had robust teeth, but never imagined it would attempt to chew through the feed bag itself. Whether the bag was edible remained an unsolved mystery, and the thought of the fish falling ill from ingesting it spurred her into action. To safeguard her prized possession, she rushed over, intent on rescuing the meal from the fish's jaws. "You can't eat that," Gushi exclaimed, seizing the bag and demonstrating the proper method. With deft movements, she tore it open and handed the pellets to the fish. Initially disgruntled by the theft, the fish's discontent melted away as it observed the assistance. It gratefully accepted the offered feed, pouring it directly into its mouth. Seeing it relish the meal, Gushi couldn't resist asking, "Can you understand me?" Typically, only successfully tamed marine beasts could communicate psychically, but this fish was no ordinary sea creature. Perhaps a miracle was in store. Sure enough, while munching on the pellets, it nodded and responded with a bubbly blub-blub. Though the fish bore a human-like appearance, its reply was quintessentially marine. Yet, its resemblance to a human prompted Gushi to teach a human speech. She attempted to have it mimic her, saying, "I've given you a name, Ace. If you dislike it, you could tell me your previous one." "Ace, blub-blub. Ace is fine. I have no name," it stammered, the words clumsy and poorly pronounced, but undeniably. The fish possessed a latent talent for speech. Upon realizing this, Gushi nearly leaped with excitement. A fish with high psychic abilities excelled in everything. Such a unique marine beast could easily be mistaken for a deep-sea tribe member. Recalling the horrifying appearances of the seahorse and manatee tribe she had seen before, Gushi deeply felt that appearance mattered. It didn't need to be perfect, but at least not too abstract. She mentally shook off the chaotic thoughts and glanced at the sleeping beauty fish to cleanse her vision. The fish was now tamed. But as for the pile of items, what did she come here for, if not for treasures? Observing that AC could now independently open fish food packets, Gushi felt a flicker of excitement and hurried over to her treasures, commencing an open inventory of her spoils. As AC had become her aquatic companion, all these items were now unbound, allowing Gushi to effortlessly gather each piece into her possession. Given the variety and considerable value of these goods, she resorted to her usual method, listing them in the trading zone. However, the prices were set with a string of zeros after the gold coins, rendering them mere eye candy for those familiar with her stall's rules, who could only gaze with envy. Chapter 218. The unfavored fabric novelty always sparks conversation. And Gushi's latest listings were no exception. In the regional chat group of Area 2333, ID 9914-710-0000, discussions buzzed. The duration of this cold snap is just too long. Could it be that future disasters will have unpredictable lengths? It's driving me insane. LOL. I'm reminded once again of the game's initial kindness when we first entered. It's freezing, but somehow I'm holding on. Sighing at the sky, I realize it's not the world that's changed, but me. I haven't gone bald, but I've grown stronger. Aside from fewer crates, things aren't too bad. Though, no one really relies on scavenging crates anymore these days. Picking crates is just for fun. Now it's all about netting them online. Human adaptability truly is remarkable. Enough with the flattery. We need to step up our game to match the deep-sea tribe. I wonder if we'll uncover more about Mercury after this disaster passes. That's not something we should be worrying about right now. By the way, all the top players seem to have gone quiet lately. Even though New World released 2 more issues, it's as if they've vanished. I don't know what gave you that impression. Clearly, you haven't been keeping up with their activities. How can we keep up? Is there some kind of X-blog here? Young man, you're adorably naive. Haven't you heard of a virtual trading zone? Wow, buddy, you've got insider info and didn't share? Let me guess which top player's trading zone has new updates. First off, rule out Li Tianhao and his Survivors Alliance. They hardly ever trade. Seriously, how could you think he's a top player? Oops, my mistake, sorry. Stop guessing. I'll give you the scoop. Sister Shi's trading zone isn't selling anything anymore. What? Is this another Pinduoduo situation? Maybe take a look before you speak. Why does everyone just say take a look without mentioning what's for sale? An unceasing stream of conversations ignited the crowd's curiosity, drawing those initially skeptical to Gushi's stall, only for them to return echoing the same sentiments. Gradually, the number of intrigued individuals swelled, while the enigma surrounding the items she sold deepened, shrouded in ever-thickening mystery. Finally, a bold voice pierced through the lingering observers and their restless curiosity. If others won't speak up, I dare to say it. Today, Sister Shi's stall is a place of learning. We learn what rare materials and items truly are, and what it means to dare to set such prices. Hold on. How can you be so blunt up there? This is the only amusement we have day in and day out. I don't recognize any of these things. What are they all about? I wonder if these item descriptions will make it into New World. What matters is the price. Every item is tagged with 8 zeros, and in gold coins at that. It's utterly absurd. What kind of eyes do you have up there? Clearly, there's one called Abyss Crystal with 9 zeros. How did you miscount? The preacher interjected. The exact count doesn't matter. What's crucial is that we can't afford them. Who would buy something without knowing its use? This must be a show-off. Where did this little detractor come from? The preacher retorted, to call it a show-off, you'd have to know what it is. If you can produce something no one recognizes, I'll bow down even if you price it with 10 zeros. But with Sister Shi's display, could it be she's raided another den of thieves? Though she hasn't listed many items, just by the look of it, she's treating the trading zone like her personal backpack again. Speaking of which, I'm at a loss for words. I've never seen backpack expansion materials so hard to come by. Space stones, I've glimpsed through certain channels. But what in the world is hyperweave? Probably no one in the entire region has a 20-slot backpack. Not necessarily. Maybe Sister Shi does. Had Gushi known someone suspected her of expanding her backpack, she would have denied it instantly. But she was too engrossed in joyfully handling her treasures to bother with the idle chatter in the chat channel. After gathering her prized possessions, Adhering to the principle of leaving no trace, Gushi tugged at the unassuming cloth beneath them. Though it appeared ordinary, she sensed a hidden layer beneath. While she could have used her mental energy, exploring with her own hands held a unique charm. As she pulled firmly on a corner of the fabric, inspecting the unknown had become second nature to her, so she naturally read its information. Hyperweave, a special type of fabric with multiple uses. She had stumbled upon something extraordinary. The name hyperweave struck a familiar chord within her. Lost in thought, Gushi opened her crafting panel and typed in the name. Instantly, the system displayed an item she had long yearned for. Upon seeing what could be crafted, she gasped softly, her breath catching in her throat. It was a backpack. A lump formed in her throat as emotion welled up. This item, neither dropped by the boss nor available at the auction, left her believing she would carry a 10-slot backpack for an eternity. She felt a surge of emotion, yet was overshadowed by a deep sigh. Prolonged disappointment had stripped her of any capacity for surprise. So, she tucked it away. In her possession, it had already fallen out of favor. Gushi stuffed the super fabric in her backpack, the material curling obediently as it settled inside. With the item stored, she turned her attention to the coffin-like box. Scrutinizing it meticulously, her sharp eyes quickly detected a slender crevice, beneath which surely lay hidden space. Without hesitation, she picked up a sharp spike and applied brute force to the box. Plu, my bed. As she pried, the box creaked loudly, successfully drawing AC's attention. He abandoned his fish feed and rushed over in a few quick steps, draping himself protectively over the box. Plu, you'll break it like that. Unable to comprehend why something resembling a coffin was called a bed, Gushi pinched AC's cheek, urging him not to hinder her work. Her expression twisted slightly, her tone laced with a hint of menace as she declared, "If you don't want it ruined, open this seam yourself." Indeed, Gushi took advantage of the fish's unwillingness to harm her, recklessly threatening to damage his bed. Of course, she had no real intention of destroying it. She was merely consumed by curiosity about what lay concealed beneath. Moreover, it was the first time she had encountered a fish that would resist fish feed to defend its bed, a novelty that intrigued her. The usually icy AC appeared pitifully attached to his bed, and Gushi couldn't bear to see him so distressed, so she relented, allowing him to handle it. Plu, Lulu. I'll retrieve what's underneath for you, but I must take my bed away. This marked the first instance she had seen a fish bring its own furniture along. Impressed by AC's initiative, she nodded with a touch of benevolence. Delighted by her consent, AC immediately set to work, deftly dismantling the bed panel with such practiced ease that Gushi suspected he had done this countless times before. As the panel lifted, a dazzling golden glow nearly blinded her. Gold coins. So many gold coins. Chapter 219. Shattered illusions. Had she not once spent a fortune of 1,000 gold coins, Gushi might have still fancied herself wealthy. But reality had taught her that her funds were far from sufficient. Thus, the sight of this pile of gold coins made her feel like a fish returned to water. The scent of money was utterly intoxicating. If not for the fish beside her, Gushi would have been tempted to climb into the box and claim the bed as her own. Perhaps her blatant desire struck AC as peculiar, for he cast her an absurd and awkward glance. She offered no explanation, knowing that a sea creature unaware of her past could never understand. Plu. I thought only certain types of sea beasts were fond of shiny gold things. I never imagined you'd like them too. The innocent words of the fish stirred a mischievous impulse within Gushi's heart. She realized she had recently awakened an automatic conversion skill, effortlessly translating the statement into an equation. Many sea creatures adore glittering treasures, equating to vast wealth. Without hesitation, she openly corrected AI's inaccuracies, stating, "I don't just like it a little. I adore it intensely." And it's not only some sea creatures. Deep-sea races are included too. Gold coins are crucial, indispensable for survival at this stage. Where in the vast ocean isn't gold needed. Take the Sea Ghost clan, for instance. Despite their innate spatial talents, they devote themselves entirely to amassing riches, all for the sake of survival. Plu. I see. This might be the innate gift of your kind. AIC spoke in the simplest terms, yet his words carried a chilling weight. Deep down, Gushi longed to explain that humans are complex beings, where love for money isn't an inherent trait, greed is. But such insights would be lost on the fish, even if she voiced them. Plu. I also know where to find such things. I'll take you there. After rationalizing Gushi's behavior, the fish offered to surrender its possessions, an unexpected turn that caught her off guard. Regardless of the motive, this presented an opportunity she couldn't ignore. AIC swiftly gathered the nearby fish food and hurried toward the rear wall, with Gushi quickening her pace to follow. His newly grown hair trailed along the ground, forcing her to tread carefully to avoid stepping on it. As they approached, Gushi sensed something unusual about the place. She inquired with curiosity, "This seems like a segregated spatial area, doesn't it? What lies beyond?" "Plu plu, plu plu. Yes, I discovered a vast space back there." Hearing this, Gushi's bewilderment deepened. She wondered about the connection between this location and AIC. Was it a seal? It didn't appear so, as seals don't come with burial offerings. A resting place? Yet the elaborate exterior seemed excessive for mere slumber. Moreover, his claim of discovering the space suggested unfamiliarity with the area. Puzzled, she stayed close behind him. When AIC halted, she did the same. She watched as he extended a hand into the chaotic, distorted space, unleashing a surge of psychic energy. Gradually, the turmoil dissipated, revealing a pitch-black passageway behind it. Standing behind AIC, Gushi leaned slightly to peer inside. "What is this place?" "Plu plu, plu plu. Not sure, but I sense a space here with something glittering inside." That glittering object was gold coins. AIC tilted his head with a questioning look, clearly unfamiliar with the concept of gold coins. Gushi offered no further explanation, stepping forward to enter the passage with AIC following closely. The corridor was enveloped in darkness, so profound that not even a hand could be seen before one's eyes. Gushi attempted to illuminate the surroundings with the sharp pearl. Yet this peculiar environment absorbed all light, leaving them to rely solely on mental fortitude for navigation. Man and fish descended further, their footsteps echoing in the deathly silence of the void. To shatter the oppressive stillness, Gushi initiated conversation. "You bear a striking resemblance to the deep-sea tribe," she remarked, a comment that instantly caused the air around AC to grow heavy. "Blub blub, blub blub. I am not. The deep-sea tribe only keeps sea creatures as pets." The retort left Gushi speechless. She knew it was a sensitive topic, but curiosity gnawed at her. Why would such a formidable sea beast end up as a pet for the deep-sea tribe? "Have you encountered any deep-sea tribe members trying to capture you?" Gushi inquired softly. "Blub blub. Yes, but I am powerful too. They could never catch me." While his prowess was undeniable, his self-proclamation carried a hint of vanity. Unfazed, Gushi subtly shifted the subject. "My ship hosts several sea creatures, but they are all enormous. Why are you so small?" "Blub blub, blub blub. My true form is vast, but enlarging brings complications. So staying compact is preferable." Gushi's eyes sparkled with realization. So this fish could alter its size too. She had assumed only octopuses possessed such ability. Discovering this commonality, she eagerly introduced her household octopus to AC. "Blub blub, blub blub. Size shifting? That is a skill of octopus-type sea creatures. My transformation stems not from ability, but from my sheer power, allowing me control." "Wait, you say you can control it? Does that mean your true form mirrors your current appearance?" Gushi's voice involuntarily rose in pitch. This was staggering news. If true, his original body must dwarf even giants. Her illusions shattered utterly. Initially overjoyed to encounter a humanoid fish, she now felt crushed. No human resembled a giant. Forgive her, she was unprepared for such a horrifying tale. "Blub blub. Indeed, my true form is immense." Suddenly, a vivid image flashed in Gushi's mind. A colossal, limb-equipped sea beast hunting in the ocean, tearing apart a shark king with bare hands. A scene of sheer terror. Her shattered perceptions left her so disheartened that she failed to notice the pile of gold coins ahead until AC halted her. "Blub blub, blub blub. This is the spot. Earlier, I sensed something glittering here." Though darkness prevailed, Gushi's mental senses detected the heap of coins. Words like immense wealth and fortune stormed her thoughts, instantly banishing her dashed fantasies as she lunged toward the treasure. Chapter 220. The heart of the island faced with melancholy and joy, Gushi naturally chose the latter. She gathered every gold coin into her possession, the clinking sounds serving as a prelude to her elation. After the performance concluded, she counted 23,779 gold coins successfully deposited, marking the greatest windfall. Yet, with the treasure secured, she had no intention of returning. her spirit alight with anticipation for the path ahead. However, this notion was met with opposition from AC. Paruru, unable to explore ahead with psychic senses. Though she was unaware of AC's psychic level upon entering this space. She had sensed its restrictive nature on mental abilities. In the open ocean, her detection range spanned over a kilometer, but here, it shrank to less than 5 meters. From this, AC's prowess was evident. Not only had he observed the gold pile through distorted space, but he had also penetrated it to arrive here. The deeper one ventured into this realm, the more oppressive the psychic suppression became. Even AC admitted his inability to probe further, signaling an abyssal unknown where retreat was the wise choice. Yet, Gushi harbored a different perspective. Here, though her psychic powers were curtailed, she had encountered no danger whatsoever. A sense of security that emboldened her to challenge the unknown. For deep-sea races or marine beasts reliant on psychic abilities, the terror of their powers failing was ingrained in their very souls, their survival instincts screaming against advancement. But Gushi was different. As a human, she had never possessed innate psychic abilities. It was only after arriving in this new world that such power was bestowed upon her. Thus, it was merely a skill, not a core part of her being. This blend of safety and cognitive divergence convinced her that the passage's end was worth exploring. Moreover, AC's stubbornness hinted that the notion of not proceeding might be a mental constraint imposed by the world, and she saw an opportunity to uncover its secrets before humanity was fully assimilated. Having made her decision, Gushi instructed AC to wait there, then resolutely stepped forward. If humans could glean more knowledge of this world, their chances of survival would multiply. She advanced through the darkness, each step deliberate and slow. Vision was stripped away, sound drowned in utter silence, leaving only the tactile feedback from each footfall to guide her next move. Step by step, she pressed on until a sudden, soul-deep restraint urged her to halt. Gushi surmised that this sensation was likely what had bound AC earlier. But with Earth's integration into this world still incomplete, she still had a window of opportunity. Exhaling a breath, she continued her arduous, slow progression, just as she began to fear the descending staircase was endless. A sudden glow illuminated the space ahead, brightening her world in an instant. Though the public world's time might have been but a fleeting moment, within her, it felt as if eons had passed across the stars. Ahead, a massive, rhomboid crystal of deep blue energy hovered semi-suspended in the air. Its radiance held an irresistible allure, akin to flames beckoning moths. Amidst the radiant glow, Gushi was seized by an overwhelming sense of peril, compelling her to halt abruptly. Though unable to harness her psychic abilities here, she could still access her backpack's dimensional space. With composed grace, she retrieved a gold coin and flicked it near the azure energy crystal, only to watch it vanish silently into the unknown. Undeterred, she produced another coin, this time casting it directly onto the crystal, which promptly devoured it without a trace. These two attempts illuminated the truth. The space ahead was untouchable, and the blue crystal itself was equally forbidden. Just as she resolved to turn back, the azure energy crystal underwent another transformation. Though it remained eerily silent, it began to split autonomously from its center, cleaving naturally into two halves, one drifting upward, the other sinking downward, while a third object materialized between them. What was it? Gushi stared in disbelief at the translucent sphere before her. If her eyes did not deceive her, suspended within the crystal was a miniature replica of the island. She could discern every detail. The colossal tree, the foolish birds, and even the ice crystal bird boss, all captured in their precise positions and actions. Beneath the levitating sphere, seawater gradually spread, accompanied by the familiar sound of waves crashing against the shore, a gentle yet distinct rustle filling the space. The noise struck a chord of recognition within her. Suddenly alert, Gushi checked the time. It was already 5:10 p.m. Did this signify the island's imminent descent? She had to depart swiftly, but not before attending to one crucial matter. With a racing heart, she activated the game system to inspect the crystal, hoping for valuable insights despite not having touched it. Heart of the island, untouchable, immovable, the essence of the world's existence. Success. This was all she needed. Suppressing her exhilaration, she hastened her retreat through the darkness. The return journey proved effortless, devoid of obstacles, allowing her to even unleash a sliver of psychic energy. Though her vision remained limited, She could now see. Empowered by this newfound sight, she quickened her pace. As she ascended, her field of view expanded further. Upon reaching the pile of gold coins, she was astounded to find she could perceive the scene beyond the passage. Gushi's mind reeled with bewilderment. Could witnessing the heart of the island have catalyzed a leap in her psychic prowess? And to think she could navigate this forbidden space with such ease, a privilege she had never dared to dream of. Paruru, you're back. AC was still waiting there. Nodding urgently, Gushi urged, let's hurry out. The island is sinking. Speed was now her utmost priority. Ace appeared lost in thought. Watching Gushi stride forward before coiling his flowing long hair around her, whisking her away like the wind. The prepared fish, Ace, seemed to intuit his master's desire, carrying her straight out of the deep pit cave. Along the way, obstacles such as first and second gates became mere decorations. In the blink of an eye, the sky unfolded before Gushi's eyes. As they burst forth, a single thought crossed her mind. The blue was quite beautiful, though Ace's hair was unbearably cold. Under her protest, she managed to free herself from his icy locks, but the chill was far beyond what her clothing could withstand, leaving her with a freezing debuff. Fortunately, the health loss was minimal, something she could endure. No sooner had she escaped Ace's hair than the birds gathered around, though she longed to take them along. Time was too scarce now. Chapter 221, Farewell. Today marked the final chance to set foot on the island. This journey was pressed for time, leaving her little opportunity to seek other resources. After departing today, she wondered if she would ever see the birds again. Moreover, she had already harvested all the island's ice crystal fruits, leaving her concerned about whether the birds had enough sustenance. At this thought, Gushi felt an uncharacteristic melancholy. At the moment of parting, she stood on tiptoe, stretching her arms to bid a final farewell to the birds, expressing gratitude for their care over the past days. The birds seemed to sense her emotions, lowering their heads to nuzzle her palm. Gushi gently stroked their heads, advising, in this vast world, no feast lasts forever. Thank you for your kindness these days. The sea is perilous. Take good care of yourselves. The birds responded with a chorus of quacks, lined up neatly to say goodbye. After petting the small birds, Gushi approached the large one. This time, not only had she tamed a fish, but also uncovered treasure. All thanks to the ice crystal bird boss. Given its immense size, even on tiptoes, she could only reach the feathers on its lower legs. So she shifted her attention to its tail feathers. Seeing the large bird close its eyes in contentment, Gushi spoke earnestly. You must learn to be more cautious in the future. What if someone with ill intent tries to sneak attack you? Not all beings are as friendly as she. Encountering malicious individuals could spell disaster. The birds quacked a few times, as if to reassure her. They lingered together until the island began to sink, forcing them to part. Gushi flew back on sharp spikes, while Ace, though unable to fly, demonstrated his prowess by freezing the ever-warm sea dew, striding across the ocean surface. With each step, ice formed beneath him, allowing him to follow her path. Thus, one soared in the sky, the other raced on the ground, partnering to return to the future. Upon reaching the boundary, Ace reminded her to store some of the ever-warm sea dew. With the lesson from the gold coin hunt fresh in mind, Gushi placed considerable trust in his advice. Since Isifuo specifically mentioned it, she would undoubtedly undertake extensive water storage preparations. Moreover, with no immediate plans to depart from these waters, opportunities for such tasks remained plentiful. As one person led a fish back aboard the vessel, they were greeted by the jubilant, leaping octopus. Not only that, but even the typically bottom-dwelling horde of fish had surfaced. Sea creatures inherently admire strength, and upon witnessing the arrival of a formidable newcomer, all the domestic marine beasts emerged to pay homage to the latest addition to their family. Among them, the octopus possessed the highest intellect, now clinging persistently to Gushi's leg while occasionally casting cautious glances with its dark, gleaming eyes toward the newly arrived AC. Gushi glanced down at its timid demeanor, sensing a potential for it to evolve into a whimpering creature. Meanwhile, AC, under the octopus's scrutiny as described by Gushi, found his mind going blank. Plop plop, where should I place my bed? The humanoid-shelled sea beast sighed, the profound incongruity drawing Gushi's attention back to him. She offered AC a few words of reassurance before prying the octopus from her trouser leg. His name is AC, and from now on, he will be living with us. Chirp chirp, the pitiful whimpers of the potential winner were unmistakable, though Gushi couldn't decipher their meaning. Little did she realize that, from the octopus's perspective. AC appeared as a dark, enigmatic, and menacing sea monster, its glowing eyes seeming poised to devour them at any moment. Rationally, it knew the newcomer wouldn't attack, yet primal instincts evoked fear. After briefly explaining the situation, Gushi retreated indoors. Unprepared for such a companion, she had to temporarily house AC in the shark bone dwelling. Once inside, she stored all her belongings before finding a moment of respite. Despite numerous tasks awaiting her, exhaustion weighed heavily. Her nearly depleted mental energy couldn't be fully restored by mere potions alone. It demanded genuine time to recuperate from such weariness. Lying on the sofa to rest, her mind continued to race with plans for the days ahead. Basic attribute training had been delayed for 2 days and must resume tomorrow. AC's accommodation needed a permanent solution, and she had to find suitable containers for the eternal warm sea dew. Lost in thought, Gushi drifted into slumber on the sofa, missing dinner entirely and awakening only at 7 a.m. on the 68th day of the sea calendar. Yawning, she headed to her room to attend to personal hygiene and change clothes. After bathing and dressing, she entered the kitchen to find the octopus lethargically preparing breakfast, its drooping head mirroring her own drained state. The sole distinction lay in her packed schedule versus the octopus's freedom to play after chores. How frustrating. The mere thought solidified her belief that the octopus ought to be kept busier. Aside from island landings, training constituted the most crucial element of Gushi's routine, prioritized above all else barring exceptional circumstances. After breakfast, she commenced her daily foundational training. Upon completion, she received a fresh batch of synthesized materials from Sululu. Without delay, she replaced the ship's supplies with the new acquisitions. Leveraging the convenience of construction, she expanded and renovated the original shark bone dwelling, crafting a new chamber for AC, whose bed was finally put to use once more. During this period, she enlisted AC's assistance in transporting numerous oversized plastic barrels to collect the eternal warm sea dew, thereby lightening her own burdens. By the time these miscellaneous tasks were concluded, dusk was approaching. In a rare moment of leisure, Gushi resumed teaching AC to speak human language. Thus, a tranquil day drifted by serenely. On the 69th day at sea, it became evident that lingering in these waters was no longer necessary, prompting Gushi to instruct the sea creatures to prepare for departure. The previously cleared path had frozen over, requiring the octopus to wield the fire element cannon anew to forge away. This time, a single blast shattered the ice layer more extensively, pulverizing large chunks into fragments. "It's become much more brittle," Gushi silently remarked. Such minor changes held little significance for her imminent departure from the region. After 2 or 3 days of leisurely sailing, she finally left the icy expanse behind. Standing on the 3rd deck, she gazed back at the frozen landscape, bidding it a final farewell. Just as she was about to depart, a chorus of squawks echoed, led by the ice crystal bird boss, followed by 6 others. The birds spotted Gushi, but the confined space of the 3rd deck, too narrow for their size, compelled them to hover mid-air, fluttering their wings in greeting. "How did you get here?" The sudden appearance of the birds filled Gushi with a mix of surprise and delight. The stored ice crystal fruits could now be returned to them. She guided the birds to land on the deck. Emerging from its cabin after work, the octopus saw the birds circling overhead. One suddenly lowered its head to stare, causing a flicker of unease. Chapter 222. Settling and unaware of the octopus's feelings, Gushi focused entirely on the birds. Though not as massive as the sea creatures, their size was considerable, and their landing quickly occupied the remaining deck space. Yet, the birds showed no discontent, enjoying Gushi's friendly strokes while chirping animatedly. After giving each bird an equal share of attention, she asked the ice crystal bird boss, "Why have you followed me here? Do you wish to come along?" The first question was genuine, the second tinged with personal hope, half in jest, but with a hint of anticipation. The boss bird seemed to appreciate her sentiment, responding with 2 squawks and nuzzling her with its large head, a gesture Gushi instantly understood. "But my supply of ice crystal fruits is limited. You might go hungry if you stay with me." Although Gushi spoke those words, her hand clutched the bird's feathers tightly, showing no intention of releasing them. Fortunately, the birds didn't mind, allowing her to stroke them freely, after having its head petted and feathers ruffled to its satisfaction. The ice crystal bird boss suddenly spat out an icy blue fruit that rolled to Gushi's feet. Squawk! After expelling the fruit, the boss nudged her with its large head, urging her to pick it up and examine it. Complying, Gushi inspected the item. Ice crystal tree seed, originating from the rare ice crystal giant tree. It was actually a seed. After reading the information, she scrutinized the peculiar fruit once more. The seed of the ice crystal tree closely resembled the ice crystal fruit, easily mistaken for the fruit at first glance. Thus, ordinary ice crystal trees produce common ice crystal fruits, while the ice crystal giant tree yields seeds. This realization struck her profoundly. The ice crystal bird boss had bestowed upon her a grand gift, akin to offering its very throne. With the seed, she could cultivate an ice crystal tree. With the tree, there would be fruits, and with the fruits, the bird's sustenance would be secured. But with the food issue resolved, what about their habitat? The ice crystal birds were sizable creatures. In the future, a single tree on the ship wouldn't suffice for their roosting. It seemed the future vessel would require significant expansion. This chain of necessities reminded her of an amusing saying from her past on Mercury. Buying a bag leads to purchasing matching attire, then changing hairstyles and vehicles, and ultimately, to renovating an entire home, spiraling into replacing everything. If she were to keep the birds, she dared not dwell on it. It was she who had first contemplated the idea. Faced with the birds' hopeful gazes, she couldn't bring herself to voice her concerns about the cascading adjustments. Plululu stay. Plant tree. AC had approached unnoticed, tugging at the ice crystal bird boss's tail and addressing Gushi in halting human speech. Having coexisted with the bird on the island for so long, a bond had formed between them. Naturally, he wished to keep the familiar companion in their future lives. Did you know each other before? Gushi inquired curiously. Plululu, no big one. Watching the boss and AC seemingly communicate, Gushi sighed softly in resignation. I understand. She had already intended to keep all the birds, and now, with AC's initiative, she resolved to enlist him as both advisor and laborer. To construct a living area for the birds, the immediate priority was to expand the ship's dimensions. Currently, the fusion materials she possessed hadn't even completed the original vessel's upgrades. So establishing a habitat for the birds would necessitate using alternative resources. However, she had no clear estimate of how much expansion was needed. Pondering this, Gushi assessed the sizes of the birds. The ordinary ice crystal birds measured about 2 meters in length, while the boss exceeded 4 meters. To provide them with adequate nesting space, it seemed thousands of square meters would be required. The mere thought of such an area made her head spin. Before she even began the repairs, she sensed that this vast undertaking would be a formidable challenge. Was there any way to provide a dwelling for these birds without occupying too much space? Gushi stared at the birds, lost in thought, her mind already contemplating whether to consult the greedy tome. The moment the idea of the greedy tome crossed her mind, a sudden clarity dawned upon her. She abruptly rose to her feet, patting her head in self-reproach. How foolish she had been. Such items must surely be available at the auction. After all, the Sea Wraith's spiritual abilities were related to space. It stood to reason that artifacts like subspace containers might exist. No, there was no doubt about it. The invitation itself served as the perfect example. With such clear evidence before her, why should she hesitate? She could simply purchase what she needed with her wealth. This time, she had amassed a considerable sum of gold coins. With money at her disposal, she could indulge in consumption. After bidding farewell to the fish and birds, Gushi turned and entered the special auction space, where she began perusing the catalog for the desired items. Her search revealed a variety of subspace artifacts, ranging from dozens to hundreds of square meters in size, with prices varying from hundreds to thousands of gold coins. When the greedy tome wandered back, it found Gushi scrutinizing items on a colossal luminous screen. Though her expression remained aloof, the occasional furrow of her brow betrayed her dissatisfaction with the offerings. Sensing a business opportunity, the greedy tome mimicked the Sea Wraith sales approach and called out, "Esteemed guest, might you require my assistance?" Lately, it had been developing skills to proactively seek out potential consumers, and Gushi's current demeanor presented a prime chance for profit. Drawing on its timeless experience, the greedy tome detected the scent of wealth emanating from her. Had Gushi been using a notebook-style screen, she would have snapped it shut to prevent prying eyes from spying. After all, on Mercury, even clever cats and dogs could order their own toys and snacks, making vigilance against theft essential. Unfortunately, she was not facing a laptop but a massive screen, and the greedy tome, with its inherent authority, could interfere with the auction system developed by the Sea Wraith. Thus, her actions were virtually transparent to it. Sure enough, The greedy tome immediately accessed her browsing history. Such is the power of big data recommendations, however unwelcome they may be. So you're searching for spatial artifacts. Before Gushi could utter a word, it continued. Actually, you don't need to make a purchase. You can commission a custom piece from the Sea Wraith. Gushi, who had been continuing her search, halted her actions, slightly taken aback by the greedy tome's suggestion. That the money-obsessed tome would offer such helpful advice was truly astonishing. Though not a living entity, the greedy tome felt as if it were trembling under Gushi's intense gaze. Its next words carried a mix of 3 parts awkwardness, 3 parts regret, 3 parts irritation, and 1 part exasperation. Don't look at me like that. This information isn't valuable. You can obtain what you need in the waiting lounge before the auction. Chapter 223. Customized space. This was indeed an unexpected revelation. Gushi had assumed the matter would be far more complicated. Yet if it's such a simple matter, why sell spaces at all? Gushi voiced her inner doubt aloud, awaiting the greedy book's response. The book floated up and down, automatically activating its fee-based mode. It demanded 10 gold coins. Gushi suddenly felt an itch in her fists. Her lowered hand subtly rubbed beneath her sleeve as she mentally calculated the likelihood of successfully pummeling the entity. After an internal debate between reason and emotion, she resolved to pay, consoling herself that this was no time for petty frugality. Though the greedy book's charges were steep, its information was genuinely valuable. Once the gold coins were transferred, the greedy book leisurely explained. Essentially, creating a space requires a core as a medium for support. The higher the medium's value, the larger the resulting space. For instance, the auction invitation space uses the invitation as its medium, but due to its low worth, the space remains small. The pricing of spatial items sold at auctions is primarily based on their cores, hence larger spaces command higher prices. Gushi immediately grasped the key point. So, if I seek the Sea Wraith, I should prepare my own medium? The greedy book praised. You catch on quickly. Precisely. However, customizing a space entails an additional fee for the Sea Wraith's labor. If it's just a labor fee, Gushi was quite willing to pay, though the final price would require negotiation. With a lead on spatial expansion, Gushi promptly signed up for the upcoming auction. Her main goal wasn't the auction itself, but since she was going to arrange the custom space, attending seemed worthwhile. Scanning the item list, she found mostly trivial goods, not worth buying for herself. Yet, what she didn't need, others might. Her earlier item education column in New World wasn't just for broadening knowledge. Now, heading to the auction, she decided to include these items alongside the Mist Pendant and Illusion Bracelet. Naturally, she had no time to handle this personally, only requiring a final purchase list. Gushi swiftly jotted down the details, then opened her friend panel to contact Sun Yiming. Her terms were straightforward. Post this message in the 2333 regional chat group, soliciting those interested. Buyers could state their maximum acceptable prices and prepay. If successful, she'd charge a nominal 10 fee. Skepticism or refusal didn't bother her. She wasn't relying on this to get rich. If deals clicked, great. If not, parting ways was fine. As for Sun Yiming's incentive, he could prioritize up to 3 desired items from the lot. For Sun Yiming, this form of advantage proved more beneficial than direct monetary compensation. After concluding matters with him, Gushi turned her attention to tallying her gold reserves. Despite a previous substantial expenditure of 1,000 gold coins, the recent windfall of over 30,000 coins from the island had abruptly elevated her to the status of a wealthy individual, albeit self-proclaimed. Naturally, it was impractical to deposit the entire sum into her Haishin card. Thus, with prudent caution, she hauled a hefty sack containing 20,000 gold coins, intending to flaunt her affluence boldly in the auction house's waiting lounge later on. She was well aware that the Sea Spectres held a particular fondness for prosperous clients. By displaying ample financial resources before them, she could potentially enhance her standing with their race. Additionally, to ensure the smooth execution of her plans, she deliberately selected 3 Cormigere items, all recommended by AC as being particularly suitable. Observing AC's nonchalant attitude toward her former inheritance, treating wealth with the disdain of mere dirt, a mark of lofty virtue, Gushi felt her own spiritual cultivation fell short. To nurture a more refined character, she resolved to familiarize herself with exquisite objects, thereby immunizing herself against future temptations. After all, the most effective defense against allure is to have once possessed it. rendering it powerless. Time slipped by unnoticed, and soon Gushi received the auction catalog and preparatory funds from Sun Yiming. After a cursory glance, she stored them away, committing the essentials to memory. With all preparations complete, she gathered her belongings and once again entered the unique space of the invitation letter. Although this was her second visit to the auction, the entire process remained vividly etched in her mind. Upon successfully teleporting to the waiting lounge, Gushi, with practiced decorum, dragged out the shark skin sack brimming with gold coins and made her way conspicuously through the crowd toward the sea specter attendant. As she advanced, she keenly observed the creature's reactions. She noted that despite its eyes composed of chaotic, swirling lines, whenever confronted with incomprehensible or startling events, those lines would shift horizontally. Coupled with its small triangular mouth and ever-shifting hues across its form, its emotions were unmistakably transparent. Essentially, everything was written plainly on its face. As the customer approached, the sea specter's eyes turned horizontal, and its speech grew halting. "Honored guest, may I assist you?" It was the first time the specter had encountered a visitor dragging a sharkskin sack, while aware that no race would dare cause trouble at the auction. The unfamiliar sight left it somewhat flustered. Had Gushi been privy to its thoughts, she too would have been astonished. After all, who had ever witnessed a specter being frightened? The notion was utterly unnerving. Gushi fixed a steady gaze on the sea specter until its colors began to flicker more rapidly, then calmly deposited the gold coins onto the reception desk. "Here, I wish to make a deposit," she declared, deliberately allowing the gleaming coins to peek out from the sack, as if in eager collaboration. For a moment, the sea specter was a loss for words. In its experience, no one had ever come to this place to deposit money. Within the unique confines of invitation letters, individuals deposit their funds through specialized devices. However, the sea wraiths, ever committed to fulfilling client demands, promptly assisted Gushi with her deposit. Renowned for their avarice, each sea wraith possesses exceptional skills, particularly in the art of counting currency. Although the non-game controlled space lacks automated tallying functions, the sea wraith astonishingly completed the coin counting task in mere seconds, showcasing unparalleled expertise. This proficiency was so remarkable that it evoked the chaotic card dance from Gushi's childhood Spider Solitaire game, which rewards players upon successful completion. While awestruck by the sea wraith's counting prowess, Gushi felt a twinge of dissatisfaction, silently vowing to one day amass an unmanageable hoard of gold coins for them to count. "Most esteemed guest, here is your Ocean Trust card." The sea wraith respectfully presented the now blue card. The shift in hue signified an elevation in her VIP status, lifting her spirits considerably. Speaking of colors, it is essential to outline the Ocean Trust card's hierarchy. True to their penchant for categorizing clients, the sea wraiths have established 5 tiers based on transaction volume: white, green, blue, purple, and diamond cards. Though devoid of tangible perks, the color serves as a symbol of status. For Gushi, this emblem was secondary. She valued the altered demeanor it elicited from the sea wraiths. Indeed, the moment her card transformed, their attitude shifted palpably, smoothing the chaotic lines in its eyes. The sea wraith inquired with utmost deference, "Most honored guest, how else may I be of service?" Observing its money-driven countenance, Gushi mused that it was no wonder they excelled in business. Beyond their unmatched counting skills, their service tactics were first-rate. Were she in their place, even with ample incentive, she could never master such a dramatic change in facade. From this perspective, the sea wraiths proved to be truly extraordinary denizens of the deep. She recalled their initial encounter, where they treated her with respect and courtesy, never belittling clients over small transactions or racial differences, a mindset ideal for commerce. Moreover, the satisfaction derived from dealings with them intensified with increasing financial stakes, leaving her with a sense that transactions with sea wraiths were not just acceptable, but increasingly delightful. At this thought, Gushi shuddered slightly. Could it be that the sea wraiths possessed a transaction-related system, akin to her own fish-rearing system, where feeding fish boosted their affinity? As she drifted in contemplation, the sea wraith's voice pulled her back to reality. "Most esteemed guest, what service do you require?" Clearing her throat, Gushi responded using her mental energy. "I require 50 units each of mist necklaces and metamorphosis bracelets. Moreover, I wish to apply for additional customized spatial services." "What procedures are required?" As Gushi articulated her demands, the sea spirit meticulously recorded each one, completing the task just as she finished speaking. Particularly upon hearing her request for spatial customization, the number of colors shimmering on its body surged to 4. Spatial customization. This was a major client indeed. Typically, few patrons sought such bespoke services. This was not due to any lack of importance placed on spatial items, but rather because most could be readily acquired at auction houses without the need for special orders. Thus, clients desiring customization were clearly unsatisfied with the limited offerings available through auctions. Furthermore, the cost of customizing space was exorbitant, aside from the essential core medium required. The labor fees alone amounted to a substantial sum. Consequently, such high-value clients were a rarity. It needed to act swiftly, already envisioning a significant boost in its performance metrics. The sea spirit's expressions were not conveyed through facial features, but through its eyes and luminescent displays. Yet even so, Gushi could discern an unmistakable air of obsequiousness. Suppressing the increasing radiance emanating from its form, the sea spirit replied, "Certainly, most esteemed and unparalleled customer. Please wait a moment while I prepare the mist necklace and the transformation bracelet for you. Additionally, regarding your customized service requirements, we will dispatch a specialist to coordinate with you. Kindly step this way for a brief respite." Just moments ago, it had been super esteemed customer, but now it had escalated to unparalleled esteemed customer. Gushi felt an overwhelming urge to facepalm, though the sea spirit's eyes barely qualified as such. Humans likely lack their level of perceptiveness. However, she would not refuse such excellent treatment. After all, she was spending genuine currency. Thus, driven by the corrupting influence of wealth, the sea spirit employee opened a door that had not existed before. She followed it into the inner chamber and was utterly astonished upon entering. If the area she had been in before was the auction house's waiting lounge, this space was unequivocally a super VIP treatment zone. The room spanned approximately 200 square meters, more than 5 times the size of the exterior area. Crucially, the decor was opulent, with glimmers of pearl and gemstone evident throughout. Yet the arrangement avoided any hint of vulgarity, evoking an overall impression of understated luxury reminiscent of an oceanic realm. The walls were crafted from custom-made sea blue crystal, intricately carved with beautiful patterns adorned with mother-of-pearl inlays. Ornaments fashioned from pearls and shells pieced together into artistic compositions, while luminous pearls resembling night pearls floated overhead, illuminating the entire space. The sofa, made from an unknown material, offered a comfort surpassing even her own. Closing her eyes and calming her mind, she could detect a faint, soothing fragrance permeating the air. What is this? Gushi inhaled deeply. The aroma seemed to emanate from a psychotropic plant, known for its excellent effects in calming the spirit. Accepting the gracious hospitality, Gushi was invited to sit on the sofa, whereupon the sea spirit promptly served tea sets and refreshments on the table. From behind, it materialized 2 ethereal hands to pour tea and serve Gushi. As it attended to her, it effused with unparalleled yin-shin, most esteemed guest. This beverage is crafted from a plant our sea wraiths have recently cultivated. Do taste it. Encountering deep sea clan's cuisine for the first time, Gushi was brimming with curiosity. She promptly picked up the cup before her to examine it closely, even disregarding the drink within. The vessel itself was unlike anything she had ever seen, markedly different from human-made cups. Observing the concentric rings adorning the cup, she inquired with intrigue, "What are these?" The sea wraith glanced at the indicated spot, its mind momentarily blank before a flash of realization dawned. It gracefully recovered. My apologies. I nearly forgot you are of the new human species. Allow me to explain." Gushi watched as the sea wraith selected another cup, methodically rotating the rings in a precise sequence, causing the cup to transform into a bucket. When it twisted the rings in an alternate manner, the cup shrank to the size of her thumb. Witnessing such novelty for the first time, Gushi unconsciously parted her lips slightly and exclaimed spontaneously, "So this cup can adjust its size?" The sea wraith promptly replied, "Indeed, though I only demonstrated once. In truth, it can enlarge further, but shrinking beyond that isn't possible, as there are no smaller deep-sea beings." Her eyes sparkling with interest, Gushi remarked, "This cup is quite fascinating. Please document it, and note this sofa as well." The sea wraith set down the cup and swiftly recorded the details with practiced ease, indicating she wasn't the first to make such peculiar requests. Clients like Gushi, who seek customizations, are adept at uncovering the value in objects. Hence, The Sea Wraith had prepared these items in the ultra-exclusive VIP lounge. A shrewd merchant subtly promotes products, much like the Sea Wraith does. As it jotted notes, Gushi took a sip of the beverage. While pleasant and offering a mild, relaxing effect, it didn't captivate her enough. Setting the cup down with feigned composure, she inquired calmly, "You mentioned I'm a new human species. I'm curious. How do you perceive humans?" This question held immense significance for her. Though not representative of all deep-sea clans' views, it provided at least a reference point. Naturally, what she deemed important might not intrigue the Sea Wraith. When posed the query, it seemed momentarily bewildered, the lines in its eyes wavering before it echoed. Perceive? For the first time, a race had asked the Sea Wraith such a thing, leaving it somewhat flustered. Yet, adhering to their creed of fulfilling customer demands, it quickly composed itself, pondering the question with its limited intellect. 1 minute passed, it was still contemplating. 2 minutes elapsed, it remained deep in thought. Beside her, Gushi had not anticipated that a single question would stump the sea spirit so thoroughly, utterly, and completely. Left with no alternative, she had to provide more specific, guiding terms. Carefully choosing her words, Gushi rephrased the inquiry. For instance, what were your initial thoughts upon first encountering humans? How do they differ from your deep-sea kin? As expected, with clear direction, the sea spirit seemed to unlock a previously dormant understanding. Yet, the second question only deepened its confusion. The sea spirit responded, "What thoughts? Why speak of differences from the deep-sea race? Aren't humans simply the human branch of the deep-sea clan?" 3 massive question marks loomed in Gushi's mind. She was genuinely perplexed as to why the sea spirit would classify humans as part of the deep-sea human lineage. Sensing her bewilderment, the sea spirit continued. "Aren't you the newly emerged deep-sea human tribe? Though perhaps due to some inherent flaws during your formation, many of you have been captured." Gushi furrowed her brow, repeating the key term she had just heard. Flaws? With the barrier broken, the sea spirit's responses flowed smoothly. Yes, innate weakness in spiritual strength, physical frailty, and an inability to submerge in the ocean. Your only redeeming quality seems to be your remarkable luck. I've heard from captured humans that your race can retrieve floating chests from the sea and possesses a unique system. Had Gushi been holding anything, it would have surely slipped from her grasp. Though the sea spirit's words were bizarre, they were laden with intriguing information. She had long known the deep-sea race was diverse, with both allies and foes, and being captured by hostile factions was inevitable. But what was this about luck and retrieving chests? Could the deep-sea folks see these chests but not retrieve them? Gushi pressed, "Given all that, do you still consider humans part of the deep-sea race?" Her question once again baffled the sea spirit. "What do you mean? Don't many races look quite similar?" Communication isn't an issue. The real problem is your inability to dive. It's quite severe. Honestly, your human tribe seems rather pitiable. Gushi found herself at a loss for rebuttal. Not only among the deep-sea folk, but even the sea beast fish in her own home bore resemblances to humans, making it impossible to deny kinship based on appearance alone. Moreover, she fully understood why the sea spirit would deem humans pitiable. Continuing her inquiry, Gushi listened as the sea spirit elaborated its perspective. It explained that in its worldview, the entire realm was ocean. And for deep-sea humans, as part of the deep-sea race, to be unable to thrive underwater was nothing short of a curse. Living in the ocean yet not mastering it was akin to humans needing oxygen masks to breathe. Without them, survival was impossible. The logic was coherent, leaving Gushi with no grounds for argument. From a deep-sea race's standpoint, the emergence of a new species was not unusual. These perceptions stemmed from their own cognitive framework regarding humans. Yet for humanity, this very viewpoint might hold a silver lining. Although it is peculiar for humans to be dubbed the deep-sea human clan, one must admit that these deep-sea beings indirectly acknowledge humanity's right to exist in this world, refraining from outright forceful exclusion. Gushi, feeling a sense of relief, took a sip of her beverage before shifting the conversation. "By the way, has my scheduled spatial customization service been completed yet?" She would not forget that this matter was her current priority. The earlier exchanges were merely tangential conversations aimed at gleaning more information. The Sea Wraith responded, "My companion is already waiting outside. I shall have it enter immediately." Upon receiving the affirmative reply, Gushi nodded. Soon, Sea Wraith number 1 escorted Sea Wraith number 2 into the room. The latter was slightly plumper in build than the former, presenting as a somewhat stout apparition despite its ghostly form. After a brief exchange of greetings, Sea Wraith No. 1 exited the space, leaving only Sea Wraith number 2 and Gu Shi in the VIP reception area. With the auction imminent, Gu Shi wasted no time and directly placed the 3 core mediums she had prepared on the table, stating her request. I wish to customize a space with a minimum area of 1,000 square meters. Could you kindly assess which of these 3 core mediums will be most suitable? Sea Wraith number 2 materialized 2 hands and began examining the items Gu Shi had presented. After a thorough inspection, it declared, "This is Neptune's stone of excellent quality, capable of supporting approximately 2,000 square meters. This is Coral Whisper, which can sustain around 500 square meters. Lastly, this is the shell of a wind-tide conch, able to uphold about 1,500 square meters." Listening to the estimated spatial capacities, Gu Shi pondered internally. She had selected these 3 items initially because they were high-grade, yet seemingly useless. If they could serve as core mediums for spatial creation, it would be a perfect utilization of resources. Based on her needs, she now had to choose between the Neptune stone and the wind-tide conch shell. Which one to select? Gu Shi found it difficult to decide immediately, primarily due to her limited knowledge of the items. Thus, she intended to seek the opinion of Sea Wraith number 2, an expert in the field. She elaborated more clearly on her spatial requirements. This space is intended for raising a specific type of bird. It must include special trees and maintain a cold climate. Given these conditions, which core medium would be more appropriate? Sea Wraith number 2 contemplated for a moment before replying. Esteemed customer, I had not anticipated such a query. However, since you ask, I presume you suspect that the core medium influences the spatial environment? Gu Shi nodded, not denying the statement, as she did not believe core mediums were merely simple components. The Sea Wraith praised, "You have keen insight. Spatial items indeed function that way. A space crafted with Neptune stone will feature less aquatic area and more land. In contrast, one made with a wind-tide conch shell will have more water, less land, and experience strong winds." Hearing this analysis, Gu Shi felt relieved that she had inquired further. Otherwise, choosing the wind-tide conch shell might have posed challenges even for planting trees. With the core matter clarified, Gu Shi promptly made the decision. She would use the first material and opt for the largest possible size. The greater the custom area, the higher the cost. Initially, Sea Wraith 2 had assumed Gu Shi would stick to 1,000 square units, but upon hearing the customer boldly double the order, it was instantly overjoyed, nearly exclaiming, "Boss, how generous." Chapter 226. Shopping spree. The custom space requirement turned out to be twice what Gu Shi had anticipated, inevitably leading to a significant price increase. She had only prepared 20,000 gold coins and now wondered if it would suffice. With the specifications settled, the next step was negotiating the price. Under the condition that Gu Shi provided the core materials, Sea Wraith 2 quoted a rate of 10 gold coins per square unit. Although this seemed steep compared to auction house spatial items, Sea Wraith 2 justified the cost by explaining that larger spaces demanded more mental energy, hence the pricing. Despite the financial sting, Gu Shi proceeded to swipe her Sea Trust card for the 20,000 gold coins, finalizing the custom project. The order was placed with a 3-day delivery timeline. When inquiring about the delivery location, Sea Wraith 2 informed her that each invitation letter bore a unique code, akin to a personal address, and items would be directly sent to the invitation's spatial storage, conveniently resolving retrieval issues. However, this sparked a new query in Gu Shi's mind. Perplexed, she asked, "When I previously encountered the Sea Wraith merchant ship, wasn't it said that transactions at sea relied on chance encounters? If we follow your method, couldn't I simply order and pay directly here?" Sea Wraith 2 clarified, "Exceedingly esteemed guest, that approach is not feasible. Using the invitation's spatial storage for transactions is a temporary measure. The mental energy consumed by spatial channels, along with their limited capacity, prohibits large-scale item exchanges. Thus, we have specific regulations for express services. Transactions under 10,000 gold coins cannot utilize the invitation's trade channel. Small items worth 10,000 gold coins are indeed rare." Given Sea Wraith's restrictions, she refrained from demanding special privileges. In contrast, she recalled the game system's massive teleportation events during promotions, which required unimaginable power. This reflection deepened her curiosity about the game system's capabilities. After the transaction, Sea Wraith 2 reminded her, "Exceedingly esteemed guest, The auction is about to commence. Snapping out of her reverie, Gushi gathered her personal belongings, tidied her appearance, and, escorted by Sea Wraith II, embarked on her second auction experience. This attention to her outward presentation stemmed from the fact that she had no need for items in this auction and had depleted her own funds. With only a few dozen gold coins left in her purse, the rest belonging to other bidders, she had to maintain appearances to prevent Sea Wraith from discovering her financial state. She settled into a private spatial chamber, ready for the event. Due to her recent extravagant expenditure, her customer status ascended once more, granting her VVIP privileges. The Sea Wraith attending her was now number 3. Upon her arrival, she remained unaware of the exchange between Sea Wraiths 1 and 3 that led to her being escorted to a room more spacious and comfortable than the previous one. Sea Wraith 3 inherited the address from its predecessors, proclaiming, "Unparalleled esteemed guest, the auction is about to commence. Do you require any additional services?" Gushi was familiar with this courtesy, but declined any extras this time. To free her hands, she handed Sea Wraith 3 2 gold coins. She placed 5 gold coins before the Sea Wraith and instructed, for the subsequent lots, follow this list precisely. Place bids only at the minimum increments, and if the price exceeds the specified limits, withdraw immediately. Most auction attendees have clear objectives, making Gushi's approach of casually presenting a comprehensive list quite rare. Sea Wraith 3 accepted the list with astonishment, noting it cataloged nearly all non-decorative items with maximum bids that were not insignificant. The Sea Wraith emitted peculiar gurgling sounds, drawing Gushi's sidelong glance. "Is there an issue?" she inquired. Sea Wraith 3 replied, "None at all. I am merely calculating the total sum." Gushi had anticipated this. In the Sea Wraith's domain, entrusting full bidding authority risked inflated prices for profit, potentially costing her clients unnecessary expenses. Hence, she deliberately withheld 3 gold coins from the initial payment. To ensure the Sea Wraith performed its duties diligently, Gushi produced 3 more gold coins. Unlike the previous ones laid flat, these stood upright on the table. Puzzled, the Sea Wraith asked, "Unparalleled esteemed guest, what does this signify?" Gushi calmly employed her psychic energy to set the coins spinning continuously. Fixing her gaze on Sea Wraith 3, she enunciated each word. "I will be observing. If you adhere to the rules and secure the bids, this shall be your additional reward." Though her demeanor might seem disrespectful, Gushi believed in clarifying terms up front. As seasoned merchants, Sea Wraiths have encountered diverse clientele, including those like Gushi. Thus, Sea Wraith 3 responded with utmost courtesy and confidence. "Unparalleled esteemed guest, rest assured, our kind holds credibility in the highest regard." Applying its own psychic force, Sea Wraith 3 halted the spinning coins, leaving them perfectly upright on the table. "Moreover, I claim these 3 gold coins as an advance gratuity," it declared. No sooner had the words been spoken than the coins toppled over with a clatter onto the surface. Gushi offered a mechanical, corner-of-the-mouth smile and reclined on the sofa, watching Sea Wraith 3 commence its tasks. The auction proceeded smoothly, though not entirely without incident, or rather, a few disturbances did arise. Since the guests in the VVP room had consecutively secured several items, the final lot was also claimed by them, culminating in their acquisition of over 20 pieces. Gushi remained stationary, awaiting the payment and delivery process. Sea Wraith number 3 meticulously organized the goods, proudly stowing away 3 gold coins with evident pride. Flattering obsequiously, Sea Wraith number 3 remarked, "Exalted and unparalleled guest, your brilliance today has truly illuminated the auction." Such sycophancy left Gushi at a loss for words. She cast a meaningful glance at Sea Wraith number 3 before responding. "In this place, no race is privy to the identities of those seated within these chambers. What talk of brilliance is there?" Seizing the opportunity to promote, Sea Wraith number 3 countered, No, your auction details are meticulously recorded in the Sea Wraith database. Should you continue to shine so brightly, you may earn an invitation to our exclusive auctions." Gushi's hand, poised to swipe her card, hesitated. Exclusive auctions? She pondered. Aware that auctions varied in scale and offerings, she had yet to encounter the concept of exclusive ones. Chapter 227. The Thawing Ice Surface. Previously, Gushi had gleaned information about the arena from an auction. Now, she stumbled upon news of exclusive auctions. She found herself overwhelmed by the plethora of deep-sea activities, uncertain which to partake in. Yet, the notion of exclusive auctions seemed particularly intriguing. Handing over a Sea Trust card, she inquired, "What do these exclusive auctions entail?" Sea Wraith number 3 explained, "They are categorized into 3 types. The first for treasured items of level 1 patrons, the second for sea beasts, and the third for deep-sea races." A ripple of curiosity stirred within Gu Shi as she pressed further. But aren't the latter 2 also available in regular auctions? What sets these apart? Sea Wraith number 3 elaborated. The first distinction lies in the homogeneity of the lots. All items belong to the same category. The second is that these commodities represent the creme de la creme of treasures. Gu Shi struggled to reconcile with the Sea Wraith's perspective of treating living beings as merchandise, as if everything in their eyes was a tradable commodity. Paradoxically, this very ethos underpinned their neutrality, a rarity among deep-sea races. Though she disapproved of their practices, she conceded that this characteristic afforded humanity greater opportunities. As interactions with the Sea Wraiths expanded with increasing ocean depths, fostering communication would significantly benefit the expansion of human living space. Suppressing her discomfort, Gu Shi smiled and replied, "I'll keep that in mind and strive to shine in the auctions." After collecting her spoils, Gu Shi departed the auction venue. Upon returning to the invitation letter space, the smile that had graced her lips vanished without a trace. In truth, she had no desire to smile. The forced expression felt profoundly unpleasant. Yet sometimes, one must engage in distasteful acts out of necessity. After a considerable passage of time, once her emotions had settled, she finally reopened the panel displaying the favorability of the intelligent races. Upon inspection, she noted the shifts in their standings. Deep-sea colossal tortoise, 0. Deep-sea merfolk, 110. Deep-sea specters, 75. Abyssal scale tribe, 55. Over time, the affections of the deep-sea denizens had evolved. The merfolk's goodwill was steadily waning, though the cause eluded her. It seemed to have plummeted to an abyssal low. Through 2 auction encounters, the specter's regard had risen, a promising development. The formidable SSS-ranked overlord, the deep-sea colossal tortoise, remained indifferent, perhaps deeming other races unworthy of its notice. As for the recent encounters with the plump, spherical beings, their fondness for humans was notable, suggesting potential for fostering camaraderie. Gu Shi meticulously weighed and pondered these dynamics. In truth, she despised such transactional interactions, yet with humanity teetering on the brink, adaptation was unavoidable. She envisioned a day when her rapport with these amiable deep-sea races might mirror the effortless bond between the crystalline bird and its aquatic companions, freeing her spirit from such burdens. Emerging from the invitation space, Gu Shi was greeted by her household pets clustering around, though matters remained unresolved. Sharing the progress with her avian friends felt reassuring. "I've reserved a vast space," she announced, "and in a few days, once it's complete, we'll plant the ice crystal trees and decorate it to your liking. You'll have your own nest then." Despite the negativity accumulated at the auctions, the thought of securing a home for her birds lifted her heart. The feathered creatures erupted into a chorus of caws before soaring skyward in jubilation. After they departed, AIC drew Gu Shi aside to relay his discovery. "Blub blub. The ice has issues," he stammered, his speech still halting but his intellect sharp. He quickly mastered whatever she taught, amassing a growing vocabulary. "Blub blub, the ice melts too fast." As a sea beast highly attuned to ice, having spent years in frigid waters, he possessed an intimate understanding of its properties. If he deemed the ice problematic, it undoubtedly was. Prompted by AIC, Gu Shi recalled the fragile ice that had crumbled under the fire element cannon. Given the freezing conditions encountered earlier, that ice field should not have been so vulnerable. Connecting these threads, her thoughts grew clearer. Having lingered too long in that icy expanse, neglecting the shifts in Zone 2333 while absorbed in her own affairs, she realized the need for fresh intelligence. Returning indoors, Gu Shi handed the auction items to Sun Yiming and accessed the Zone 2333 channel, swiftly filtering through recent disaster-related updates. Zone 2333, Regional Chat, 9902-110-0000. The temperature has dropped again. Everything here is frozen solid. My vessel remains immobile, yet I am able to disembark onto the land. My belongings were retrieved directly from the icy surface. Although my ship is still capable of navigation, the surrounding area remains a body of water. Here, a blizzard rages, enveloping everything in a vast expanse of white, obscuring all vision. Everyone, let us cease discussing mere phenomena. The distinctions are indiscernible. Simply state the temperatures. I recall that previously, the temperatures across our regions seemed quite similar. Mine reads 21. What about yours? 37, 5, 51. Is there any place colder than here? Upon reading this message, Gushi reflected that the lowest temperature she had ever encountered was 47, still some distance from the extreme lows. She continued scrolling through the fragmented discussions on temperatures, and to her astonishment, she realized the vast disparities in the conditions faced by everyone, with differences spanning dozens of degrees. Grasping this, her fingers moved more swiftly through the entries. Astonishing. In such frigid weather, I feel no chill. It appears my attributes are indeed beneficial. It is somewhat alarming. I feel as though I could embark on an expedition to the polar regions. I apply to join the scientific research team. Is no one else perplexed by this? Why such immense variations in temperature? I do not know, but surely we will uncover the reasons in time. I'm unaware. I only observe that ice seems to be forming everywhere. At this point, Gushi paused her scrolling. Everywhere icing over, yet she had just emerged from the ice fields, where the current temperature is 19, and the sea remains unfrozen. Moreover, the ice that had formed earlier was brittle, shattering easily under artillery fire. How can the same low temperatures lead to freezing in some areas, while others appear to be accelerating thawing? Chapter 228. The end of the deep freeze on the 72nd day of the maritime calendar. The deep freeze persists. The primary distinction from before lies in the erratic patterns of freezing and melting upon the sea. The more messages shared in the regional chat, the more evident this phenomenon becomes. After the future navigated out of the ice fields, the waters it traversed were smooth, devoid of any ice, and the temperatures in those regions gradually rose. Under previous weather and temperature conditions, one would expect at least scattered ice debris everywhere, if not a solid sheet. This prolonged freeze has not yet precipitated any major catastrophes, leaving one to ponder whether it is a blessing or a misfortune. Nevertheless, facing challenges as they come, Gushi and her crew remain focused on the present. The custom-designed space remains unfinished, forcing the ice crystal birds to roost upon the rooftops. Several of these birds enjoy circling the future, and despite their considerable intelligence, they inevitably produce some waste. The task of cleaning up after them ultimately falls to the octopus. Though referred to as the ship's steward, the octopus's duties extend far beyond mere household chores, and with each new addition to the crew, its workload inevitably increases. Now it has evolved beyond being merely the sweeper, chef, zookeeper, gardener, gunner, and salvager aboard the future. It has acquired yet another identity, Ace's loyal subordinate. How pitiable the life of a fish. The octopus gazed helplessly at the ceiling of Ace's chamber, several tentacles clutching cloths as it meticulously polished Ace's box-shaped bed. Its mind drifted back to the joyous days when it first arrived on the ship, riding sharks in playful abandon. Though those moments had passed not long ago, to the octopus, it felt as if half a lifetime had slipped away. It harbored a nostalgic longing for the days when living creatures visited the vessel. For only during those times did its mundane existence briefly ascend into moments of brilliance. Urged on by Ace, the octopus quickened its pace, emitting a couple of disgruntled murmurs, dismissing its earlier musings as mere daydreams. Little did it know, the radiant moments it yearned for would soon materialize into reality. On the early morning of Sea Calendar Day 73, Gushi received a system announcement declaring the imminent end of the deep freeze, marking the conclusion of a catastrophe that had persisted for over 20 days. The chat channels in Zone 2333 erupted in jubilation. Although the ordeal had lasted twice as long as previous disasters, the survival challenges had been significantly mitigated, leading everyone to rejoice at its relative simplicity. Moreover, during this period, those with nefarious intentions had refrained from covert activities, further reducing the difficulty in rendering this disaster unprecedentedly straightforward. While a handful recalled the irregular patterns of ice melt, their attention was swiftly captured by the system's official declaration of the disaster's end, causing them to dismiss the detail from their minds. Post-disaster game announcements typically followed a familiar pattern. Beyond reporting survivor counts, rewarding those who endured, and updating leaderboards, the most crucial element was the unveiling of new content. The preceding details could be overlooked, but the fresh additions demanded keen attention. Seated in his workshop, Gucci listened intently to the new features outlined in the game's broadcast. Rewards distributed. New game content unlocked as follows. 1. Current accessible ocean depth extended to 5,000 meters. The next phase will permit activities within 7,000 meters, with increased hazards. Players are advised to proceed with caution. 2. Introduction of new raft construction features. Related details require independent player exploration. 3. Cancellation of disaster celebration events. Compensatory rewards include materials for floating communication stations. Game announcement. Mercury and this world have initiated integration. Currently it's 60 fusion. Players are encouraged to actively explore the emerging realm. As anticipated, following the announcement, footage of calamities on Mercury was displayed. This visual presentation served as the sole portal for players to glean insights into Mercury. Missing it meant waiting until the next recap, hence all watched with rapt attention. Memories of the previous Mercury visuals remained vivid in everyone's minds. The coastline devoured by colossal waves, the relentless floods from torrential rains gnawing at humanity's living space. People's terrified screams, weeping, frantic escapes, and helpless pleas for salvation. Yet this scene differed from the last. It now depicted the aftermath of devastation across Mercury. Ravaged by deluges and oceanic fury, crowds huddled together, initiating self-rescue efforts as the slightly calmed waters allowed the circulation of aid supplies. Though the land remained submerged, a glimmer of hope rekindled in many eyes, brought by the relief efforts. Witnessing this, the chilled hearts of all in the new world found a measure of solace. Alas, this was not the full picture. The scene swiftly shifted as one calamity waned. Another surged forth. The all-too-familiar rain and snow from Mercury skies began to fall once more upon Region 2333. Temperature drop. Nearly everyone murmured in unison within their minds. While the inhabitants of a new world carved out survival in a world dominated by oceans, those on Mercury were far from living in comfort and ease. Though the nature of disasters varied, calamity struck indiscriminately. In Region 2333, the regional chat group, 9900-710-0000, buzzed with agitation. What's happening? Why is Mercury cooling down? Damn it. If disasters are inevitable, why not bring everyone to the new world instead of leaving some behind? Can't we accelerate the fusion now and get everyone over here? The vast majority had loved ones to worry about. Only a few were truly alone. Witnessing these scenes, it was hard to believe anyone would stir up trouble in the days ahead. Some seethed with irritation, others with anxiety, but more than anything, there was a collective yearning for immediate world fusion. Watching kin and friends suffer from afar versus right before their eyes, they would choose the latter. I'm so furious I could curse. If the disasters had stuck to their original schedule, wouldn't fusion have happened faster? But now this one's duration has doubled. Is it meant to claim more lives on Mercury? Complaints stem from a sense of powerlessness toward the environment and one's own capabilities. Yet, recognizing this root, people grew more proactive in their subsequent actions. Stop the cursing. What good does it do? All we can do now, under the game system's protection, is swiftly enhance our strength. Exactly. The disasters on Mercury are worsening. Relying on anything else is futile. We must depend on ourselves. And they've canceled the post-disaster rewards this time, saying they'll compensate with materials for floating communication stations. Who knows if that's a fair trade? Hey, you upstairs. Do you still think this is some game? Worrying about fair trades. Haven't you realized by now? It's not about rewards or events as gimmicks to retain players. It's about seizing real advantages. What if one day the system's protection vanishes? Think about what survival skills you'd have left. A drop of kindness can breed ingratitude. Sometimes, too many benefits lead to complaints of insufficiency. Nowadays, such words have sparked reflection and resonance among many in the 2333 region. Gucci couldn't help but hypothesize about this scenario. If the system were gone, backpacks rendered useless, communication with others cut off, visuals of Mercury vanished, crates no longer retrievable, and trade among survivors impossible, how many could truly rely on their own skills to endure? This line of thought evoked a pressing sense of urgency. For those unfamiliar with the floating communication station, let me recount its functions. Once established, the holder receives a unique identifier. By entering another station number, players can initiate video calls and track their location at any time. Upon learning its specifics, many who had overlooked the instructions realized that with this device, even if the system disappeared, they would retain a means of contact, preventing isolation in the vast ocean. Thus, the value of the communication station is immeasurable. Chapter 229. The floating communication station. By now, it's widely known that the New World is an oceanic realm. Its true extent a mystery. This world is fraught with perils, and the metrics of strength and power differ entirely from those on Mercury. In such circumstances, achieving human communication is an extraordinary luxury. With this means of connection, the importance of materials pales in comparison. Reflecting on this, Gushi couldn't help but admire the system's grand design. She didn't know how others perceived the communication station, but ever since obtaining its blueprint from the last event, she had ceaselessly searched for the required materials, many of which she still hadn't encountered. Relying solely on human effort, it might take ages to gather all the components. Although reward events were canceled after the frost disaster, for her, the materials for the floating communication station held greater value than any event spoils. Of course, she kept these thoughts to herself. There was no need to share them with others. Whether people recognized the material's worth wouldn't affect what lay ahead. Gushi redirected her focus to the regional channel. As soon as someone detailed the functions of the floating communication station, others quickly grasped the key points. The station has two critical elements: the identifier and the location. The identifier is straightforward, but entering it to view someone's position, isn't that akin to a positioning system? I'm curious about the basis for this location tracking. While you all were discussing, my friend and I have already constructed the communication station. The core of a location feature is the ship's name. Yes, I'm a friend mentioned earlier. Once you successfully add an identifier, it's like friending someone. You can request to view their ship's location. Upon approval, you'll see their ship's name on a virtual screen. However, the distance remains unknown. If you plan to rendezvous with a friend, be prepared. You might pass through deep-sea territories without warning. Damn, I must hurry to repair the communication station so I can reunite with my friends. Oh my, finally, a glimmer of hope. Apart from the first two events, it's been ages since I've seen another person. Humans are social creatures, and prolonged isolation carries significant risks. With the floating communication station feature now available, although many continue to banter in the regional chat, more are opting to gather materials and prioritize building the station first. Of course, Gushi shares this intention. Swiftly closing the chat interface, Gushi retrieves her reward from the trading space and prepares to begin construction. However, she realizes she has no idea what the communication station looks like. Unlike floors or walls, which can be easily dismantled and rebuilt with minimal loss if mistakes occur, she possesses only one set of materials for the station. Choosing an unsuitable location or improper placement could compromise aesthetics or, worse, interfere with signal quality. Initially confident and ready to proceed, Gushi pauses, deciding it's essential to gather more information about the station before acting. Thus, she reopens the 2333 regional chat group. With clear purpose, she types her query directly into the chat. In the 2333 regional chat group, 9900-710-0000, Gushi asks, "Can anyone describe what the communication station actually looks like?" Most people had hastily built their stations without a second thought, so her question struck many as peculiar. What does it look like? Just build it and find out. Or why does the appearance matter for construction? Were common reactions. Li Tianhao chimed in, "That's an odd request. You could have figured it out yourself by now instead of asking." Despite the skepticism and lack of understanding, Gushi remains unfazed. Different people have different perspectives. Those who built immediately were focused on the station's future use. But for her, the structure itself is crucial. For instance, if it's merely a set of tools for indoor and outdoor placement, then hasty construction might not matter. But if it resembles a specialized building, incorrect placement could lead to serious consequences. Sometimes, gathering a bit more information is the wise choice. As it turns out, Gushi's intuition proves correct. Although her question faces criticism, someone quickly steps up to defend her. "What do you single-celled organisms know? Even though I'm one of them, I can still criticize myself." Anyway, back to the point. First off, kudos to Sister Shi for her sharp intuition. It's better to understand the floating communication station before building it. I learned that the hard way. Another user retorts, "You've rambled on without describing what it looks like after building it. All that chatter and no substance." Followed by, "Wish you'd said this earlier. I just finished mine and regret it now." I second the earlier complaint and agree with Sister Shi's advice. Yet another person chimes in without providing any details on the station's appearance. Reading these responses, Gushi feels a strong urge to metaphorically toss these individuals into a hot pot for their unhelpful contributions. These individuals, each harboring their own hidden agendas, seem to calculate every move, perhaps hinting at half-warnings after suffering losses, only to reveal the full cautionary details after whetting everyone's appetite, all to attract attention and amplify their renown. Yet, such schemes completely overlook the countless victims left in suspense while they dangle information like bait. Gushi stared blankly at the flood of repetitive suggestions about understanding the communication station before construction, with no one sharing genuinely useful insights. It felt like a modern-day trap, binding people to social platforms and squandering their precious time. Doesn't anyone realize how invaluable time is in this world? She decided to postpone the repairs, confident that useful information would surface in a few days. Just as Gushi was about to exit the chat group, someone finally stepped forward. Enough of this. While extra details about the communication station won't affect our survival, is it really worth wasting time arguing over it? The preachy guy intervened. Practice reveals truth. I'll put an end to this pointless spamming. The floating communication station is essentially a room, covering about 20 square meters. Hope this helps. Rarely seen taking charge. The preachy guy cut straight to the point without pleasantries. His straightforwardness earning him praise in the regional channel and slightly redeeming the frivolous impression new members had of Area 2333. With the information she needed, Gushi promptly closed the channel, thinking to herself that the preachy guy was becoming increasingly reliable and hoping he'd keep it up. Armed with the knowledge that the floating communication station was a standalone structure, Gushi began to strategize. A separate room required its own space, not overlapping with existing buildings. Given the limited room on the ship for crew activities, installing the station now would severely compress their available area. She decided to wait a bit longer, especially since a batch of synthetic materials had just arrived. First, she would expand the ship, then proceed with the communication station. Chapter 230, Ship Upgrade. Labor doubled with the floating communication station matter settled. The focus shifted to ship construction. Before expanding the vessel's area, Gushi needed to understand the specifics of the latest update. Initially, everyone started with a simple raft, which, after several disasters, had evolved into the future for Gushi. The raft is the foundation of every survivor's existence. To thrive in this new oceanic world, one must diligently upgrade it. In the latest post-freeze rankings, Gushi had grown accustomed to repeatedly securing the top spot. For her, the rewards, though decent, paled in comparison to the allure of new content. She opened the raft construction panel, swiftly navigating to the ship upgrade section and scanning through all the details. This update featured only one major enhancement. Under certain conditions, the ship could be upgraded to a vessel. Firstly, the base area must reach 2,000 square meters. Secondly, the ship must already be equipped with a defense system. However, the conditions for the defensive system were not overly stringent compared to the first requirement. This one was considerably simpler. The most crucial aspect was that the ship required a power core. Once equipped with a power core, the vessel could, by adding fuel, to some extent maintain a fixed course, while its speed would be determined by the core itself. Yet, the update provided little elaboration on the specifics of the power core. Nevertheless, Gushi deduced that, given the need for a core and a continuous supply of fuel, it must involve some form of energy. Reflecting on energy, Gushi naturally recalled the earlier substances of water essence and fire essence, crystalline forms of natural elements that could potentially serve as the power core. However, the quality of the core directly influenced the ship's velocity, leaving their suitability still in question. This update, though, sparked a new idea in Gushi regarding the ship's layout. As the future upgraded, it became prudent to designate specialized areas for the gradually increasing functions and essential facilities. During this upgrade, she consolidated the floating communication station, the ship's defense control system, and the power core into one location. This arrangement allowed the power core to be temporarily set aside, making her primary task the expansion of the ship's base area. Currently, the future spanned only 600 square meters, less than half the required size for a vessel, highlighting the enormity of her undertaking. Rather than dwelling on thoughts, she resolved to take action, as transforming newly acquired synthetic materials into a ship base was no mere whim. Sighing softly, Gushi muttered to herself that she might have to work late into the night again, all while stealing moments to lay the foundation. All expansion work had to be handled personally by her, as she couldn't delegate it to other fish. Coupled with her training commitments, She often found herself toiling day and night. Although she noticed the octopus's recent lack of enthusiasm, what could she do? As the fish owner and boss, she was diligently laboring. So how could her subordinates slack off? Besides, there was still AC, who could serve as fish-powered assistants. If the octopus felt weary, it could leverage its social skills to persuade AC to share the daily chores. Engrossed in her labor, Gushi felt no sympathy for the merely busy octopus, instead mentally exploiting its potential. Amid these thoughts, she finally completed the ship's base. Closing the construction interface, she picked up her familiar small hammer and set to work. The announcement of the frost's end had come at dusk, and with various tasks causing further delays, the day had grown late. The sky darkened into twilight, and rows of sharp pearls began to glow, illuminating the ship in the dimness. After finishing its fish feed, AC idly commenced its daily routine of strolling around the vessel. As a colossal leviathan of the deep, his true form dwarfed the very vessel he now trod upon. Yet here he was, strolling on fin legs across a space scarcely larger than his own body, a truly novel experience. Having boarded the ship for less than 3 days, he found himself perpetually mired in ennui. To alleviate the tedium of his Piscean existence, he resorted to amusing himself by teasing other marine creatures. Just moments prior, he had engaged in a playful game of pearl counting with a luminescent fish, only to find himself once again adrift in idleness, wandering aimlessly. Peruru? What are you up to? Gussie, toiling through the night, piqued AC's curiosity. He had noticed peculiar, non-corporeal planks materializing along the ship's edge, ethereal, yet solid enough to prevent one from plunging into the waters. Moreover, as dusk deepened, azure glows emanated from the seams of these planks, vanishing only when Gussie struck them with her hammer. Witnessing the entire process of the ship's expansion, AC was utterly astonished. He had stumbled upon something extraordinary. His inquisitiveness soared. Gussie gestured for him to crouch, then launched into an explanation, or rather, a lament, about the burdens she, as the ship's owner, was compelled to bear. After listening in bewilderment for 10 minutes, AC queried in confusion, Peruru, why do it all yourself? At this, Gussie's grip tightened involuntarily, her hammer clanging harshly against the ship's foundation. Gnashing her teeth at his naive inquiry, she retorted, if not me, then who? Even with his limited grasp of human speech, AC sensed her ire. That wasn't his intent, so he carefully crafted a response, mentally drafting it within his Piscean mind before articulating anew. Peruru, what I meant was, couldn't you wield multiple hammers through psychic control? That would speed things up immensely. Clang. Gussie was so taken aback that she dropped her hammer into the sea. Yet she had no time to mourn its aquatic demise. Seizing AC's arm in exhilaration, she exclaimed, Brilliant! Such a straightforward solution, and it never crossed my mind. With that, she sprang to her feet, dashed to the workshop, and forged 30 hammers in succession. The moment they were complete, her workforce multiplied 30-fold. Though freshly crafted, she could already envision the task completion. Empowered by this surge in labor, Gussie brimmed with confidence, charging outdoors to hammer away vigorously. No wonder the ancients proclaimed, to do a good job, one must first sharpen one's tools. Why toil arduously? What folly! All that hardship led only to complaints or self-congratulation. What nonsense! To accomplish such feats, merely 3 steps suffice. First, take action. Second, employ psychic mastery over the hammers. Third, strike with resounding force, completing an hour's work in 10 minutes. That is efficiency. Chapter 231. AC's contribution with the expansion task fulfilled, Gussie's heart swelled with triumph. After driving the final foundational piece, she retracted her psychic energy without a second thought. As for tidying up the scattered hammers, she left that to the diligent octopus entrusted with cleanup duties. Content: fulfilled, refreshed, invigorated. With her spirits soaring, Gussie felt the world was bathed in an exquisite radiance. Her eyes sparkled as she gazed at AIC, who stood nearby staring at her in a daze, and she briskly approached him. A melodious tune played in her mind. How had she failed to recognize such a gem? A talent capable of enhancing her efficiency. Unlike the octopus, which merely toiled away mechanically, this was truly a steward among fish. Reflecting on this, Gussie was struck by a pang of remorse. Since AIC had come aboard, she had only provided him with basic sustenance and lodging, neglecting to acquaint him with the ship's broader operations. Her initial plan had been to wait until he smoothly adapted before making further arrangements. But she hadn't realized that for a highly intelligent sea creature, wasting even a single day of potential was a disgrace. One must harness every resource to honor their place on the future. Wearing a warm, yet unyielding smile, Gushi remarked, "I see. You've been here for several days now. Aren't you feeling a bit bored?" In truth, she had long sensed his ennui, but chose not to voice it. Now, however, she could no longer overlook the issue. Unaware of the complexities of human society, AIC nodded and proceeded to list his recent shipboard activities: kicking the octopus ball, counting pearls with the pearl fish, and surfing on the Shark King. Indeed, it all sounded rather dull. Without him elaborating, Gushi was well aware of his daily routines. She also knew that, no matter how tedious things got, AIC would never stoop to the menial tasks of an octopus, like cleaning. He'd likely resist that to the death. As for the role of caretaker, he might occasionally feed the ice crystal bird boss a bit of fruit, akin to keeping a pet, but such behavior wasn't sustainable long-term. A chef? Out of the question. His preference leaned solely toward fish feed. To be fair, that inclination was quite economical, saving her a tidy sum on meals. Lastly, the position of Gunnerwell. Given his previous outburst of psychic energy, he hardly needed such tools. Compared to the water and fire cannons that required charging pauses, any trigger-happy operator would find them unsatisfying. After mulling it over, Gushi had to concede that AIC was indeed leading a rather monotonous existence on the ship, as there seemed to be no suitable role for him. This issue was of paramount importance, for not only AIC, but also any future sea creatures joining would face similar predicaments. It mattered deeply to her as well. She couldn't simply adopt every fish she encountered. Without finding their place, their lives aboard would be squandered, even with her fish-rearing system ensuring their loyalty and trust. She aspired for them to follow her out of genuine joy, living fulfilling lives. Of course, labor could be part of that fulfillment. "Haha, you've been on board for days and met all the fish," she said. "Beyond that, let me show you the other duties on the ship." Gushi led AIC first to the smelting room, a place that had been ablaze with activity since operations began, its fires never ceasing. The majority of smelting tasks require no manual intervention. One simply needs to periodically retrieve the refined aquamarine crystals and replenish the raw ore. Incidentally, these duties are now handled by the octopus. After touring the smelting chamber, the next stops are the cultivation and breeding zones. The planting area demands minimal upkeep. Yet monitoring crop growth amidst various calamities calls for the caretaker's patience, meticulousness, and keen observational skills. Initially, Gushi had entrusted the octopus with plant care, but it proved incapable of maintaining observation logs and inadvertently destroyed several crops, leading her to abandon the idea. However, the situation has shifted. AC clearly outshines the octopus in intelligence and learns swiftly, making him a promising candidate for the role. Gushi's eyes sparkled with anticipation, gleaming as she gazed at him. AC felt a shiver under her intense stare and tentatively extended a fingertip to touch an unfamiliar plant leaf. The once vibrant green leaf instantly transformed upon contact, freezing into a lifelike ice sculpture within mere seconds, so vivid that, had it not been Gushi's sustenance, she might have marveled at its artistry and the sculptor's skill. But this was her food. Crops that took days to perish under the octopus's watering care lasted only moments in his hands, leaving no chance for survival. Entrusting him with this task would surely drive her to despair. AC calmly withdrew his finger, offering a placid defense. "Blub blub, it's not my fault. I didn't expect it to be so fragile." "Fragile?" He continued. "Blub blub, I try my best to relax and not let my psychic energy overflow." "Relax." Noticing Gushi's silence, he added guiltily, "Blub blub, look, nothing else froze." Nothing else froze. So, the creation of this ice sculpture must be blamed on the plant itself? Casually, Gushi glimpsed AC's ice blue hair, which should have trailed on the ground but was tied up, and realized the fault might not lie with this fish. The bone-chilling cold was unbearable even for her, let alone the delicate crops. Regardless, this job could not be assigned to him. If it were, she'd likely host an ice sculpture exhibition in less than half a day. Of course, she wouldn't utter words like "what use are you?" to AC, for even if he falls short in practical matters, his agile mind and exceptional combat prowess make him a standout among his kind, rendering his upkeep worthwhile. Gushi curved her lips into a warm smile, saying, "No worries, I'm just helping you cultivate hobbies. If this one doesn't suit, we'll try something else." Her words resonated with AC, who accepted them without doubt. As the human and fish took a few steps in another direction, they coincidentally encountered the octopus, clad in a t-shirt, emerging to practice its dance. This shirt, adorned with a cute octopus design, is its treasure, and the octopus often dons it for leisurely skating during free moments. Gushi cast a fleeting glance, while AIC remained transfixed, his gaze unwavering. "What are you looking at?" Gushi inquired after taking several steps and noticing AIC hadn't followed. AIC pointed at the skating octopus and asked, "Peru, what is it doing?" The octopus's dance moves clearly differed from any skating he knew, clumsy and comical. Yet they piqued AIC's curiosity nonetheless. Halting her stride, Gushi glanced at the octopus and remarked, "Figure skating. Are you interested?" She then studied AIC. If he truly showed enthusiasm, she wouldn't object. Coincidentally, her dress business lacked a model, and if the native AIC could fill that role, expanding the venture to the Sea Wraith auction might just be feasible. Chapter 232. The ship's skating rink. Gushi was pleased to see AIC captivated by the octopus's antics and actively sought to steer the situation toward an extraordinary direction. For instance, she could nurture a new hobby of skating in him. She stared intently at AIC for a long moment before slowly blinking, her fluttering eyelashes betraying the calculations in her mind. "Would you like to learn how to skate?" she ventured. "Peruru, can I really learn?" "But its movements don't look very good," AIC responded, intrigued yet disdainful of the octopus's performance. "Why not? Its half-hearted attempts are subpar. If you're willing, I can help you master elegant and graceful moves. However, given your build, you'll need a spacious rink." Gushi assessed him from head to toe, then gestured toward the edge of the future ship. "We've run out of materials this time. Once the next batch of synthetic supplies arrives, I'll build you a skating rink." Her tone was so domineering, it was as if she were declaring, "Behold, this fish pond shall be yours from now on," leaving AIC utterly stunned. He stammered, "Peruru, how will you build it?" As Gushi spoke, an ambitious plan began to take shape in her mind. What does a skating rink need most? Ice. And where would the ice come from? Naturally, from AIC, who had a special affinity for it. With the ice issue resolved, the next concern was the venue. An outdoor rink would be straightforward. Surround the area with the ship's foundation, leaving the center open. When needed, AIC could freeze the surface. Though the plan had flaws, such as whether the area would be protected by the ship's defenses or how thick the ice layer should be, she refused to let these obstacles halt progress. Alternatively, an indoor rink could utilize spatial manipulation, placing the rink within a constructed space and focusing on creating an authentic skating atmosphere. However, this approach incurs excessively high construction costs. Unless her ice rink is already profitable, it would be wise to abandon the idea. The blueprint for the plan has been meticulously laid out. Yet revealing it now would strip away all intrigue. So Gushi responded mysteriously, "A secret." The word secret was one AIC hadn't yet learned, but he had already mastered the art of reading expressions. Clearly, Gushi wasn't inclined to share with him at the moment. This tantalizing feeling persistently nagged at him. Yet he had no clue how to resolve the issue. Noticing his furrowed brow and pained expression, Gushi couldn't quite decipher what was troubling this fish. With genuine concern in her tone, she inquired, "What's troubling you?" Logically, since she had offered to build him an ice rink, he should be overjoyed, expressing boundless gratitude and developing immense trust in her. So why was he so troubled? It was rather disheartening. If someone were to construct an amusement park for her, she would leap for joy without hesitation. Truly, human hearts and fish hearts differ. Empathizing by projecting one's own feelings proves futile. Gushi's question left AIC at a loss for words, though he clearly grasped the crux of the ice rink construction. "Bloop bloop, what's this fusion material you mentioned? Is it the panels you were hammering earlier?" AIC recalled the scene of the ship's expansion and asked uncertainly. Bloop bloop, what is it? Can I help?" Gushi's heart fluttered slightly before she affirmed with conviction, "Yes." While he couldn't assist with the fusion process itself, sourcing the materials on his own shouldn't pose much difficulty for him. Suddenly, she realized she had a free laborer. Swiftly, Gushi explained the raw materials needed for the fusion process, and sure enough, AIC memorized them quickly. "Bloop bloop, I'll find them as soon as possible." Although Gushi didn't know how AIC would procure these materials, Having an extra pair of fins meant an additional source of strength. She would quietly await the outcome. The plan for the onboard ice rink was progressing smoothly. With a strategy in place, it was essential to maximize every available resource. This was where racial affinity came into play. She had already cultivated enough goodwill with the ice shield fish to contact them at any time, making them potential future patrons. Before inviting the little chubby spheres back to the future ship, she needed to make some preparations, such as ensuring the supply chain for the small dresses was in order and communicating effectively with the sea wraith channels. She could boost her rapport with the sea wraiths during her next visit to the auction. As for Luman, she could reach out to her immediately. After organizing her thoughts, Gushi bid farewell to AIC and the octopus before returning to her room. Initially, she had anticipated an all-nighter to complete her tasks. But thanks to AIC's input, the difficulty level plummeted from S rank to E rank, freeing up ample time for her to converse with Luman opening her friend's channel. Gushi located Luman's name and sent her a message. Boss Lu, how are the little dresses coming along? When Luman received Gushi's message, she was in the midst of stitching the latest design for the small dresses. One of the greatest benefits of enhanced mental fortitude and fundamental attributes was the remarkable increase in her sewing speed, allowing her to accomplish tasks with twice the efficiency. After establishing their small dress business with Gushi, Luman felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. On one hand, she was uncertain about the venture's longevity. On the other, she questioned whether the time, effort, and resources invested would prove worthwhile. In recent days, she had been working on the dresses sporadically, plagued by indecision, and compounded by Gushi's prolonged silence, which fueled a torrent of doubts and pessimistic thoughts. Just as her anxiety peaked, a message from Gushi arrived. Upon seeing it, Luman felt as though she had been handed a lifeline, instantly steadying her heart that teetered on the edge of despair. Her face lit up with joy. Luman, Shijia. Note, this was not an ellipsis, but a rapid succession of the term Shijia, a testament to one of the many uses of mental power. It could substitute for typing. With sufficient intensity of thought, a simple two-word address transformed into a vivid expression akin to an inner cry of awe, reflecting genuine emotion. Gushi observed this and felt relieved she had opted for text communication. Had it been voice, the address might have looped endlessly on the system panel, reminiscent of accidentally pressing a key that floods the screen with characters. She understood the excitement, but deemed it excessive. Thus, she responded, Gushi, can we switch to voice? The reply was instantaneous. Luman, yes. Following this brief exchange, Gushi promptly changed to a voice call. Luman, Afdia. As the call connected, Luman's piercingly high-pitched voice burst through. Foreseeing this, Gushi had wisely minimized the volume, waiting for the outburst to subside before quietly adjusting it to a normal level. Gushi, have a drink of water first. Their conversation presented a stark contrast, one brimming with fervor, the other composed and measured. Chapter 233, The Garment Business. A new opportunity arises. Though the suggestion to drink water seemed practical, Luman found it oddly unsettling in that context. Nevertheless, having shouted with such fervor, she needed some warm water to soothe her throat. After taking a sip, she partially regained her composure and continued the call with Gushi. Luman, iya. You haven't contacted me for so long. I thought our business deal had fallen through. Gushi, not at all, I've kept it in mind. But you must understand, when we're adrift in the vast ocean, signals can be intermittent. By intermittent signals, Gushi typically referred to being too occupied to communicate temporarily. The outcomes of such busyness vary. Some, after a period of toil, may find eternal rest, while others might seize great opportunities, potentially rising to prominence. As the skies hold unpredictable storms, so do the seas conceal unfathomable depths. Those who navigate the seas can never guarantee they will witness the sun rising from the west tomorrow. Given this reality, those adrift upon the ocean tend to extend a greater measure of tolerance and understanding toward others. Even the most unscrupulous souls or fervent advocates of the Survivors Alliance ideology are no exception. Thus, Luman fully comprehended Gushi's occasional disappearances without contact. Gushi wasted no time in explanations and cut straight to the heart of the matter. I intend to establish ice skating as a long-term venture, which requires a steady supply of appropriate attire from your end. The small dresses you've been crafting are only suitable for species like the little chubby, a deep-sea dweller. After completing this current batch, you can pause production for now. Luman inquired, Sister Shi, Are you planning to engage in trade with multiple deep-sea clans simultaneously? Though Lu Man was unaware of exactly how much goodwill she had garnered among the deep-sea folk, the idea alone suggested grand ambitions. More importantly, the deep-sea clans varied greatly. Customizing ice skating apparel would necessitate detailed physical data and information about each species, details that couldn't simply be resolved by she sharing a video clip. Everyone perceives issues from their own perspective. She only knew that Lu Man's dresses could cater to the Abyssal Scale clan. However, supplying other deep-sea clans would require entirely new customizations, a process for which she had no clear plan. Lu Man remarked tactfully, "Sister your concept is commendable, but creating garments for other deep-sea clans involves different considerations. Setting aside aesthetics and design, obtaining accurate physical measurements from various deep-sea species is likely quite challenging, isn't it?" Though phrased delicately, she immediately grasped the crux of the matter. If the ice skating apparel business were confined to deep-sea clans with whom she had already fostered friendly relations, it might be manageable, but attempting to market these garments to entities like the Sea Wraiths would unleash a host of complications. She had oversimplified the endeavor and needed to reflect further on it. Consequently, she instructed Lu Man to finish the current batch of dresses and then halt production temporarily. Additionally, she commissioned a custom dress for the octopus as a reward for its recent diligent efforts. As for AIC, she planned to discuss attire and modeling opportunities only after showing him the video footage. Although progress in the ice skating apparel venture was modest, it was fortunate that she had identified the underlying issues. Continuing her convalescence aboard the ship, she smoothly welcomed the 74th day on the maritime calendar. With the end of the frigid catastrophe, temperatures had begun to climb gradually. Over 2 or 3 days, the mercury had risen to the teens. This abrupt shift in weather left the ice crystal birds and AIC, accustomed to colder climes, feeling profoundly unaccustomed. AIC fared relatively well, merely experiencing a bout of lethargy that would likely resolve with further acclimatization. However, the ice crystal birds, also hailing from the icy island, faced more severe challenges. Early this morning, while the octopus was feeding them ice crystal fruits, it discovered the birds listless, heads drooping, refusing food, wings still, and lying lethargically on the deck in a drowsy stupor. The slightly expanded vessel provided just enough space for the birds to lie down, yet their occasional fluttering wings still brushed against their neighbors. Despite their efforts to flap, they remained earthbound, unable to take flight. Watching them struggle, only to rise a mere 10 centimeters before tumbling back down, even the octopus felt a pang of sympathy. These crystal birds were the property of the fish owner, and seeing them in such a state, the octopus hurriedly summoned her. Upon hearing the report, she rushed out immediately. Stepping out of her room, she was met with a scene of listless birds sprawled across the deck, emitting feeble squawks, a stark contrast to their former vitality. She approached quickly and asked, "What's wrong with you all?" Only after speaking did she recall her inability to communicate telepathically with them, prompting her to fetch AIC for assistance. Though AIC wasn't in the best condition himself, translating bird language posed no issue. He crouched down, exchanged a few chirps with the crystal bird leader, and then turned to Shi with understanding. "Puru, it's too hot. Their feathers are starting to melt. They say they need to go somewhere cold," he conveyed. Shi's heart ached as she gazed at the pitiful birds, briefly questioning the wisdom of bringing them along. But the thought vanished as quickly as it came, for there was no use dwelling on it. They were already here. She pulled the octopus aside and instructed it to cool the birds with ice crystals. As the octopus set to work, AIC quietly followed. After the fish and birds departed, Shi retreated indoors and slipped into the invitation space. It was already the 74th day. Her custom-made space should have arrived by now. She was in a hurry, desperate to use it to save the birds' lives. Hastily, she scanned the area, but her view was obstructed by a chaotic sprawl of psychic plants, their lush foliage carpeting the ground in uneven layers, making it difficult to see. Finding anything here is quite a challenge. Shi sighed, once again reflecting on how one small action can trigger a cascade of consequences. The greedy book materialized and inquired, "What are you looking for?" It had come for its morning meal and happened upon Shi in her search. With its sharp memory, it recalled that her custom space order should have been delivered. "Custom space," Shi replied offhandedly, naturally extending her psychic energy to locate the item. The greedy book simply acknowledged, oh. It had intended to remind her that the custom space's appearance matched its core medium, but before it could speak, it watched as Gushi briskly headed toward a pile of flower pots. After some rummaging, Gushi finally unearthed what she sought. Giving it a quick glance, she stored away and remarked with a hint of disdain, "This place is such a mess. It's so troublesome to find anything." The greedy book felt a surge of frustration, but had no outlet, lacking limbs to tidy up and well aware of the state of affairs. Fortunately, Gushi didn't press the issue. Brushing off her sleeves, she added, "Once I handle this urgent matter, I'll come back to organize it properly." She refused to let messy planters cause delivery issues again in the future. With Gushi having said everything, what could the greedy book do but silently close itself and have breakfast? After emerging from the invitation space, Gushi hurriedly carried the customized space toward the predetermined location. She needed to install it quickly. The birds were waiting for treatment. Chapter 234. Space Binding, Plug-in System. The space medium was a crucial item for entering the space. Though compact enough to place indoors, considering the ease of access for creatures of various sizes, Gushi decided to position it in an open area. Naturally, since ice crystal birds inhabited the space, the roof was the ideal spot, allowing them to come and go unimpeded. Currently, aside from the octopus, all other creatures on the ship were either patients or semi-invalids. Without any assistance, Gushi had to install the customized space alone. She carried the space medium to the third floor, where a platform offered a vast view, adorned with psychic flora and furnished with leisure chairs, sofas, and loungers. Although sea storms sometimes made the third-floor garden unsuitable for relaxation, it remained Gushi's favorite spot. Additionally, a ladder from the garden led to the roof, letting her ascend and savor the sensation of climbing. Initially, the construction interface lacked a roof setting, forcing the use of floors as ceilings. With system updates, separate roofs became possible, so Gushi designed a slanted one. This way, even during heavy rain, water would flow along the eaves into collection areas for easy harvesting. However, the slanted roof required careful footing to avoid slips. Gripping the handrail, she climbed the rungs and soon reached the top. Leaning slightly, she cautiously made her way to the center and retrieved the customized space. Crafted from Neptune's stone, the space was no larger than her fist, yet contained a vast 2,000 square meters inside. The deep blue hue of the Neptune stone was richer than aquamarine, its surface rugged like a meteorite, and it felt heavy in hand, indicating extraordinary density. Gushi cradled the Neptune stone in her palm, focusing her mental energy to hold it steady, then moved it to a prominent spot. Currently inactive, the space would tumble off the roof if she withdrew her psychic force. To activate it, she needed to channel her mental energy into the stone until it bound with her consciousness. Steadying herself, Gushi infused the Neptune stone with her psychic power. As it absorbed the energy, it gradually emitted a bright glow. Customized space initiating. Customized space beginning mental energy binding. Customized space spiritual binding in progress. Special reminder: the customized space can only be bound once. A continuous stream of spiritual instructions emanated from the stone. Gushi listened attentively. Though the details were extensive, aside from the irrevocable user designation, there were no other notable restrictions. Soon, the space within the Sea King crystal was activated. It hovered gently beneath the ceiling, emitting a faint glow and displaying flowing aqueous patterns on its surface, indicating its operational status. Game prompt: external spatial medium detected. Bind a future? Just as Gushi prepared to descend, the game system's voice unexpectedly chimed in, prompting her to immediately affirm the binding. Upon confirmation, the game's interface panel automatically appeared, swiftly inundated with streams of green data. System updating, please wait. With both feet still perched on the slanted rooftop and the system panel beyond her control, autonomously proceeding with the update, the situation grew somewhat precarious. Wondering if the customized space remained functional, Gushi glanced downward, resigned to reality, and retreated to the crystal's vicinity. According to the spatial instructions, a mere infusion of spiritual energy would grant her entry. Thus, she followed the prescribed procedure, extending her spiritual sense toward the Sea King crystal, only to encounter an invisible barrier obstructing her efforts. Game warning: refrain from any operations related to the bound space until the system update is complete. Reluctantly, Gushi withdrew her spiritual energy. As the system panel obscured her view, she opted to descend via the spires. Upon reaching the third-floor garden, She settled into a lounge chair to await the update's conclusion. Ideally, she should have sought out the birds to add them to the space's access list. But with the space currently inert, she could do little but recline. Checking the update progress, she noted it had barely reached 20. How exasperatingly slow. It felt like an eternity had passed for such minimal advancement, akin to a snail's pace, or rather, the gridlock of city traffic. With idle time on her hands, too brief for substantial tasks, yet sufficient for gathering information, she engaged in spiritual communication with the octopus. How are the crystal birds faring? Are they mobile now? Chirp. They're holding up well in the IC room. The octopus proved dutiful, having relocated the birds to the training chamber and gathered additional cooling units from other rooms. Under the combined effect of multiple coolers, the room's temperature gradually dropped. Though not yet matching their native habitat's chill, it provided considerable relief. Meanwhile, AC remained in the cooled space, counting pearls and intermittently monitoring the bird's condition. Satisfied with their recovery, Gushi retracted her spiritual sense. With the crystal birds stabilized, all that remained was to await the system update's completion to grant them access permissions. After approximately half an hour of waiting, the floating panel in the air contracted into a cluster and vanished. Immediately following this, a prompt from the gaming system sounded. System update complete. Please check the corresponding interface. The uncontrollable system interface finally disappeared, filling Gushi with immense joy. Eagerly, she opened the system interface and was greeted by the sight of new features. Plugins? Gushi's mind went blank for a moment before she tapped on the new function with her fingertip. The plugin interface was remarkably clean. With only a small icon appearing at the bottom, Gushi attempted to open it and discovered, to her surprise, an unloaded space marker for the Neptune stone. Upon touching it, the icon began to flicker all over, displaying a loading progress. Detected bound space. Neptune stone space loading plugin. Plugin loading complete. Once the space plugin finished loading, the interface displayed the Neptune stone space icon. By clicking on it, Gushi could clearly view the detailed information of the Neptune stone. Neptune stone space. Area, 2,000 square meters, land 50, water 50, temperature, 20 C, weather, sunny, inhabitants, 0. The idea of integrating an external space as a plugin was truly unparalleled. Chapter 235, Fish Raising System Update. Space shaping of spaces could serve as plugins. Could other elements do the same? And why hadn't the official system released any plugins? Hoping that the gaming system's official version included plugins, Gushi meticulously examined every corner of the interface, but found nothing. Just as she was feeling disheartened, another system prompt suddenly chimed. Fish raising alert. New system update detected. Fish raising system initiating update. System updating. Well, today seemed to be a cascade of system updates, one after another. Fortunately, the fish raising system didn't forcibly pop up like the gaming system, allowing her to carry on with other tasks without interruption. However, the lack of pop-ups had its drawbacks, as she couldn't monitor the update progress. Thus, Gushi had no choice but to open the fish raising system to check. 67, 6875, she silently commended the fish raising system. Its update speed, if not as swift as a rocket, certainly rivaled that of an airplane. Comparing the two systems, it was clear that without comparison, there would be no sense of disparity. In the brief moment she reflected on this, the fish raising system completed its update, and a notification promptly arrived. Fish raising system update complete. Please review at your convenience. Gushi opened the fish raising system panel. The system itself was not overly complex, and with this latest update, it had merely added two minor new features, grouping mode and permission allocation. The first function allowed the fish owner to categorize the fish for organized management. The second function enabled the transfer of fish to designated gaming system control plugins. Fish assigned to it could freely enter the space without needing to activate usage permissions. Naturally, Gushi didn't believe the permission allocation feature was limited to the space plugin alone. This update would likely serve other purposes in the future. After a brief understanding, Gushi directly assigned the octopus to the Neptune stone space. She then switched to the game system interface to review the detailed information of the Neptune stone space once more. Neptune stone space, area, 2,000 SQM, land 50, water 50, temperature, 20 C, weather, clear, resident count. Well, nothing else had changed, but the resident count had increased. Unaware of being used as a test subject once again, The octopus remained oblivious until Gushi summoned it to the rooftop Neptune stone space to scout the situation as she headed to the training room. The octopus chirped twice before hopping away to carry out its task. Meanwhile, Gushi began explaining the permission registration process to the ice crystal birds and AC. By the time the octopus returned to the training room, the ice crystal birds and AC had all grasped how to use the new space. The octopus's brief excursion yielded limited information. Through concise communication, Gushi learned some basic facts. Firstly, the space was an absolute domain. Beings inside and outside could not communicate through it using psychic energy. However, fish from the aquaculture system could penetrate the space and converse with her. Secondly, the temperature inside remained constant. To make it habitable for the birds, they needed to create a suitable living environment. Acting on the second point, Gushi and AC set to work. Leaving the octopus and ice crystal birds in the training room, the duo entered the Neptune crystal space together. Upon channeling their psychic energy, they automatically arrived at the land-water border area, where aquatic creatures could immediately submerge while terrestrial beings remained unaffected by the water. Transitioning from a chilly environment to the constant 20°C space made AC, accustomed to the cold, feel somewhat uncomfortable. Fortunately, his inherent strength minimized the temperature's impact. How about it? Is there enough space here for the ice crystal birds to reside? Gushi inquired, scanning the surroundings. Puyulu, it's a bit warm. Didn't we collect plenty of eternal warm sea dew before? We could replace the seawater here with that dew, AC firmly proposed, determined to alter the aquatic environment. This place is for you and the ice crystal birds to inhabit. You could design it as you see fit. Gushi eyed the seawater occupying half the space, harboring doubts about his suggestion. After a pause, she continued, with this much seawater, will the eternal warm sea dew suffice? Puyulu, it's more than enough. I've stored a great deal myself. Although Gushi was uncertain how AC had managed to store it, she trusted his assurance. But even if the eternal warm sea dew is sufficient, we still need to remove the existing water first, right? How do you plan to do that? She gazed at him, curious about his approach. The Plurilu ice shield fish possesses 2 stomach pouches, one previously filled with eternal warm sea dew, leaving the other vacant. How could a stomach pouch hold so much? Hearing this, Gushi grew even more curious. Alas, dissecting it was out of the question, so she had to let it go. Well, go ahead and suck it in. Though dissection was impossible, watching him manipulate such vast amounts of seawater was quite fascinating. AC nodded and immediately set to work. He opened his mouth, using his psychic energy to cover the water surface, then employed the suction generated by his powers to draw the seawater directly into his mouth. The water cascaded backward in a roaring torrent, and within moments, the sea level across the entire space began to drop. Witnessing the diminishing expanse of water, Gushi was utterly astonished. After a long while, when the seawater had receded to reveal the rocky bottom of the space, AC finally paused and remarked, Plurilu, it's full. He sounded somewhat dissatisfied, as if implying his stomach pouch didn't hold much. Had Gushi not seen the dozens of meters deep seabed, she might have believed him. Now, she understood why he claimed his stored eternal warm sea dew was sufficient to fill this area. With such a swallowing capacity, he truly lived up to being a supermarine beast fish. She couldn't help but wonder how long this fish had lived to develop such enormous stomach pouches. Once again, she deeply realized that even if someone's words seem unbelievable, one should never underestimate any supermarine beast fish. Plurilu, I'm going to release the eternal warm sea dew. Gushi snapped back to attention and continued observing his extraordinary performance. While sucking in seawater required psychic coverage, expelling the eternal warm sea dew did not. AC opened his gaping maw once more and directly expelled the water from his other stomach pouch. As the eternal warm sea dew hit the ocean, the land edges and rocks it touched instantly began to freeze. The ambient temperature, originally at 20 degrees, plummeted abruptly. Waves of chill assaulted Gushi, prompting her to hastily call out, wait, I need to get out first. It was too cold. She had been careless, forgetting she wasn't wearing her specialized suit today and couldn't endure such conditions. Without waiting for AC's response, she swiftly darted to the illusory zone of the Sea King crystal by the beach, channeled her psychic energy, and returned to the ship. Back on board, warmth gradually returned. Finally warm. Though temporarily comfortable, she still had to change clothes and re-enter the space to plant the ice crystal giant tree. As for AC's dwelling, why bother building anything? He could just sleep in a box. There were plenty of ice-sculpted palaces on Mercury. She could purchase some blueprints and let him construct his own with ice blocks. Perhaps in time, it might even become a tourist attraction. Chapter 236. Planting the ice crystal giant tree. The ice crystal birds were still waiting in the training room. And she didn't want to keep them long. After changing, she took the ice crystal giant tree seeds and returned to the Sea King crystal space. In a flash, Gushi reappeared, finding AC still in the midst of expelling water. Without turning around, he knew it was Gushi returning. Gushi approached, bending over with hands on her knees to observe the progress of his water expulsion. As the eternal warm sea dew seeped into the ground, the area near the shore had already formed an ice layer about 20 centimeters thick. The deeper waters gradually grew more profound and mysterious, reminding Gushi of the scene she had witnessed from the spike vantage point over the eternal warm sea dew's domain. At that moment, AC squeezed out the last drop of the sea dew from his stomach, closed his mouth, and looked toward Gushi. Paruru, why did you step out earlier? To change clothes. It's too cold here, Gushi replied succinctly, then continued. I also went to retrieve the ice crystal giant tree seed. I need to plant it so the ice crystal birds will have food later. AC nodded and headed toward the center of the small island. Gushi assumed he was inspecting his new territory and followed closely. Upon reaching the central spot, AC halted and pointed at the ground beneath his feet, exclaiming, Paruru, plant it here. The island was currently barren, so Gushi had no objection to where the first tree should be planted. However, she was uncertain about the method. According to the game's planting rules, she would typically need a planting box or flower pot for such items. But AC's insistence on sowing the ice crystal giant tree directly into the soil left her perplexed. How we plant this? Gushi stammered, fearful of mishandling the soul seed and risking the bird starvation. AC watched her holding the seed, staring at him blankly. He suspected she lacked planting knowledge and expected him to take charge. Yet, as a sea beast, his understanding of terrestrial flora was limited, and he too was unsure of the proper technique. Recalling a vague process, dig a hole, place the seed, cover with soil, water, and wait for growth, AC mentally rehearsed the steps. With composed confidence, he declared, Paruru, Kulme, I'll handle it. Impressed by his assurance, Gushi trustingly handed him the ice crystal giant tree seed. AC accepted it, crouched down, and began digging into the frozen earth with his hands. The once rock-hard soil yielded like soft tofu under his touch. Gushi knelt beside him, her eyes fixed intently on his digging motions. When the hole reached over 30 centimeters deep, and he showed no signs of stopping, she couldn't help but interject. Isn't that deep enough? AC cast a profound glance her way, then with an expression of complete understanding, explained, Paruru, the ice crystal giant tree can grow immense. To ensure its stability, it must be buried deeper. Resuming his digging with unwavering determination, he continued until the pit measured a full meter in depth. Gushi's doubts dissipated as she reasoned that plants in this new world must follow different rules from those on her home planet. Though she was an outsider ignorant of these ways, here was a fish who understood. This thought filled her with growing admiration as she watched AC. Together, human and sea beast crouched, digging tirelessly until their task was complete. Gushi noticed he had paused, rose to her feet, and peered inside before inquiring, Is this sufficient? Is the pit deep enough? AIC shook his head, uttering a soft murmur. Not yet. I need to jump back in and dig further. Once it a bit deeper, I'll fill some of the soil back in, and only then can we plant the seed. With an air of authority, AIC elaborated on the planting method in increasing detail, convinced that his explanation had transformed him into a skilled cultivator. The hypnotic effect of hands-on practice was truly astonishing. Moreover, one dared to speak, and the other dared to believe. After hearing AIC's words, Gushi found his reasoning quite sound, and chose to stand by the pit's edge, offering encouragement and support. IC continued digging, the pit gradually deepening until it reached a full 3 meters. Beside Gushi lay a mound of soft, frozen soil, a testament to AIC's laborious efforts. Sensing the pit was nearly ready, AIC leaped out from the bottom, pointing contentedly at the soil pile and declaring, Now it's time to fill some of this back in. Without hesitation, he began pushing the adjacent frozen earth into the pit, relying solely on his physical strength without a hint of mental energy. Gushi watched as he leveled the soil inside the pit. After a while more of diligent work, he dropped the seed of the ice crystal giant tree into the hole and covered it with the remaining frozen soil. Once the soil was in place, He patted the top layer gently, as if marking the completion of the task. Is it done? Gushi stood up, eager to check on the ice crystal giant tree's progress. But AIC raised a hand to stop her. Not yet, not yet. We still need to infuse mental energy and water it. His gesture was so abrupt. It was as if Gushi were a contagion that might doom the seed beneath the soil. Stunned by his reaction, Gushi abandoned her approach. Then you focus on channeling mental energy here, and I'll fetch some dew. Though collecting dew was a challenging task, and her reserves were scarce, she resolved to spare no expense to ensure the ice crystal giant tree thrived. Although AIC didn't know what dew was, he surmised it must be a special type of water, perfectly suitable for watering the tree. Once they had agreed, the human and the fish went their separate ways. Gushi left to retrieve the dew, while AIC remained to infuse the seed with mental energy. By the time Gushi returned with the water, she could feel the immense, continuous flow of mental energy emanating from AIC. Pausing briefly, she then continued toward him, uncertain of the ice crystal giant tree's condition. The sheer magnitude of his mental energy and the world's peculiar rules regarding its use led her to believe the tree was likely to survive. Seeing her approach, AIC opened his eyes and gestured for her to hand over the dew. Gushi passed it to him without delay. He observed the meager dew without comment, merely allocating a portion of his mental energy to envelop it. To Gushi, he explained, these droplets are too sparse, only sufficient to moisten the seeds. I shall now transport the dew precisely to the seed's vicinity. With that, AC guided his psychic force to deliver the dew accurately to the site of the ice crystal giant tree seed, thus completing the planting process. Eagerly, Gushi rushed to inspect, but found no information regarding the cultivation. Could the planting have failed? She murmured under her breath. What did you say? AC inquired. Nothing. It's fine, she replied. Besides direct observation, there was another method. Gushi sent AC away and, finding a secluded spot, accessed the game's plugin system interface. The details for the Neptune Stone Space had been updated. Neptune Stone Space. Area, 2000 SQM. Land 50. Water 50. Temperature, 20 C. Weather, clear. Inhabitants, 0. Special species. Ice crystal giant tree growing. Countdown, 80,000. Please wait. Special note. During the growth of the ice crystal giant tree, exercise caution and avoid proximity. Uncertain of the implications, but heeding the warning to evade, she decided it was wise to flee promptly. Chapter 237. The Terrifying Giant Tree. Birds take residence. In such moments, it's best to follow advice without hesitation. Without delay, Gushi shut the plug-in panel and shouted towards the distant AC, let's get out. Quickly. Confused but seeing her dash for the exit, AC followed suit. Together, they leaped out of the space seamlessly. As they exited, a faint sound seemed to echo behind them. Standing dazed on the slanted rooftop, the final noise left them bewildered about the interior state. Did you hear something? Gushi asked. Yes, I did. What was that? AC responded, turning to investigate. But Gushi grabbed his arm firmly. Wait, we can't go in now. We must allow the ice crystal giant tree time to grow, she asserted with conviction, as if privy to impending events. AC met her gaze, and after she nodded reassuringly, he relented, departing to expel seawater from his other stomach pouch. The system indicated an 8-hour growth period for the ice crystal giant tree, meaning by evening, she could re-enter. This outcome pleased Gushi immensely. The space's temperature had already been adjusted to suit the ice crystal bird's comfort. With only a few hours to wait and the potential resolution of food issues, it felt like a double blessing. Meanwhile, AC found a suitable spot on the ship to leisurely expel the seawater, no longer rushed as during the intake. Additionally, he needed to discharge the ice blocks formed by the eternal warm sea dew, which he had kept from freezing in his stomach by encasing them with his mental energy. Just moments ago, after expelling the seawater and withdrawing his spiritual energy, the stomach sac was left with a heap of icy debris. Now, he needed to clear out this refuse. Consequently, what AC spat out included not only vast amounts of seawater, but also numerous ice chunks, mingling together and instantly rendering the waters around the future ship bizarre once more. As time flowed by, Gushi, having completed his tasks, stepped out of the cabin to find AC seated by the ship's edge, spitting out mouthfuls of seawater and ice with a series of splashes. Observing his serene demeanor, it was evident he was thoroughly enjoying himself, albeit with an eccentric pastime. Gushi approached, eyeing the cascade of ice he was producing. Is this amusing? He inquired. Gurgle. It's quite entertaining, AC replied. I'm nearly done emptying my stomach sack. With that, he spat out another mouthful. Gurgle, besides the fun, I've made a new discovery. He ejected another ice chunk and gestured toward the distant, white-flecked horizon. Gurgle, there are many dead fish out there, an alarming number. You should be cautious.